All right, welcome to the conversation on the TYT Network, where we have nothing but awesome guests for you guys. So now we're gonna bring in Professor Larry Lessig from Harvard Law School. He is a preeminent expert on campaign finance reform, the godfather of that reform movement. And we want to talk about HR 1 for the People Act and break it down for you guys. So Larry, good to see you again.
Great to be here, Cenk.
All right, so well, let me start this way. Do you think this is a good bill or a great bill?
Cenk, this is a big freaking deal. I can't use a swear word. I would have used a swear word, but this is a huge, huge deal. Way beyond anything I imagined when I got into this fight 15 years ago, when I wrote my book, opening with your quote that there's only one issue in America and it's campaign finance reform. I just never would have imagined we would be this close to something as fundamental as HR 1 is. It is a big, big deal.
Yeah, and for the audience, you're familiar with what I think about Democratic bills, and so I don't say good or great as a matter of course at all with a Democratic bill, but this one is really great, and I agree with Larry. But let's break it down further. So it's got basically two buckets of reforms. One is on voting rights, and the other is on campaign finance reform. So let's talk about voting rights for a second. There, what are the provisions in there that are really needed?
Well, I mean, I would reframe it a little bit. Let's say that there are three core provisions and then a whole bunch of icing on the cake. And the three core provisions are basically a bunch of reforms that would make it impossible for the states to suppress the votes of Democrats. That's basically what this game is about. So automatic vote registration, vote by mail, all sorts of protection for the infrastructure of voting, everything to make it so that every citizen who wants to vote gets to vote. The second critical change in Title II is gerrymandering. No more partisan gerrymandering of congressional districts. And the third critically important bucket, the one we've been fighting on together for so many years, is changing the way candidates fund their campaigns by having a matching fund system, 6-to-1 match for small contributions. If you agree to take no large contributions, nothing more than $1,000. And what's really exciting for me is a pilot for a voucher program that would be like the Seattle system where you give every voter a voucher that they can use to help fund campaigns. In my view, that is the most important change to the way the Democratic Party and Congress would work, and that is still in this bill.
Okay, I want to get to the campaign finance parts of it in a second. Just one quick question on the voting rights and the gerrymandering. So there's 250 bills across the country now, recently proposed since the election from Republicans and state legislatures trying to take away voting rights in different ways. So is this the type of federal law that would supersede those local laws? How do those two interact together? And this is basically the same question on gerrymandering. There aren't new laws on gerrymandering, but does the federal government get to say it just doesn't exist anymore and we're gonna do it a different way?
Right, so the Constitution, Article 1, Section 4, expressly gives Congress the power to override the rules that the states have adopted for federal elections. So we can't do anything about the gerrymandering of state Senate races in Pennsylvania. That's just nothing within the federal government's power. And we can't do anything about vote by mail for state races in Pennsylvania. It's just not within government's power. But the Congress has an express power to be able to alter the rules the states have adopted if Congress doesn't like them. And Congress has done this historically many times. And in this context, what Congress would basically be saying is, look, an election in a representative democracy is supposed to be representative. Everybody is supposed to have an equal shot at voting. And under the system the states are implementing, they are intentionally making it harder for Democrats to participate. I mean, some people view this through the lens of race, and that's a fair way to look at it as well. But whether it's race or partisan, the point is they're trying to make it so the other team can't compete. And that's how they want to win. They want to win by making it so the other side has no equal shot. And that's why this is so critical. We're supposed to have a majoritarian democracy. And it's always been precariously majoritarian, given the Senate, given the screwiness of the Electoral College. But if the Republicans are allowed in 2022 to pass the bills that are floating through the states, and to gerrymander, now that the Supreme Court has said it's not going to have anything to do to limit gerrymandering, then they will embed a system that changes us from a precariously majoritarian nation to a predictably minoritarian, like Iraq or Syria or Rwanda, a nation where a party which is not the majority party, which doesn't get as many votes, will systematically have the ability to control our government. This is the most important fight we've seen, and it's so astonishing. We are close to winning if we can just keep this together.
Yeah, and so you understand the context of the voting rights part, and it affects gerrymandering too, for sure. So, for example, in Syria, Bashar al-Assad, the dictator there, is Alawi, and he's part of a minority party, but they took power and chose not to give it back, right. And it was by other means, but given the Capitol riots, not that dissimilar, at least the beginnings of it. And so we cannot have minority rule here. That's crazy. We have to protect minority rights, whether those are racially based or party based. We have to protect minority rights, but we can't. But a democracy by definition is majority rule, and of course Republicans did not mind that when they were the majority, and now they seem to have a significant issue with it. Obviously, when the shoe's on the other foot. One more thing on gerrymandering, though. I'm sure that the Democrats want to do the voting rights part because it's not only the right thing to do, but it actually helps them. So that's covered. Okay, our incentive system is okay on that, on solid footing there. On the gerrymandering, man, that throws everything for a loop because those districts are crazy. As you know, they're just a hot mess. So if they're going to redo all of those in a rational way, wouldn't that endanger some Democratic seats as well as Republican seats?
No, I mean, because the reality is that it's a Democratic majority nation. And so all that the federal government is doing is requiring nonpartisan districting. And so I don't think we're going to see in states like Maryland or even Massachusetts changes that would affect the Democrats. But my own view is I don't care. I mean, the point is the principle. The point is we should not have this game being played. And oh, by the way, the Republicans control wildly more state legislatures than the Democrats. So if you don't want to be principled about it, at least recognize that if the Republicans are able to gerrymander without any constraint, which is what the Supreme Court has said, this practically guarantees they will just write themselves like in Syria, the Alawite, like in Iraq with the Sunnis in Ba'athist Iraq, like the Tutsis in Rwanda. They will just write themselves into power. And the Supreme Court has said, oh, well, nothing we're gonna do about that. Indeed, the only time the court has ever gotten involved is to say minoritarian government is pretty good because when it comes to money, the Supreme Court said, sure, hell yes. Not only is it permitted, it's constitutionally guaranteed. You get to spend as much money as you want, and nothing the government can do can stop you. So the Supreme Court is hopeless on this. And the only shot we've got is HR 1 changing the rules for 2022.
Right, and I want to be clear too. So there's some super safe Democratic seats, which allows the Republicans to pick up more seats in some of those states. So it was a Faustian bargain that the Democrats did to maintain their seats as more safe. It was a very typical Democratic move. But anyone who's principled should not care about that at all. Do we have a democracy or don't we? No matter who wins. So now let's go to campaign finance. So there's a provision about lobbyists in here too. We didn't talk much about that. What is that provision, Professor Leslie?
Well, so there's a whole Title IV, which is a whole bunch of transparency provisions, which I'm not against transparency. I just don't think transparency is gonna buy us a responsive, non-corrupted government. What will buy us that is a system where members of Congress are not sucking up to a tiny number of people to raise the money they need to fund their campaigns. That's the only thing that gets us that. So yeah, there are lots of great transparency rules regulating lobbyists. There's a whole section for ethics reform, which will, for the first time, make the Supreme Court subject to ethics rules, adds a whole bunch of Trump-inspired executive branch ethics rules, adds a bunch of restrictions on Congress. I didn't realize this, but members of the House are still allowed to sit on commercial boards. I mean, it's astonishing, but that would end that. There's an election security provision, which is really important. It's got a great idea of hiring hackers to try to hack into elections and see if they can break in. And it's got a requirement that presidents release their tax returns, candidates release their tax returns. So all of that, I think, is icing. The most important part is the part you and I have been fighting about. That's campaign finance, that's Title V, that's matching funds and a pilot program for vouchers.
We're very honest that we're progressives. We call the Young Turks home of progressives, and we support progressive candidates.
There has been this reemergence of political activism, especially among young people.
This weekend was the second Women's March, both across the US and across the world. So these people are not simply marching, they're not simply talking, they're also running for office. And when they do run, they're gonna make a difference.
Joe Crowley is congressman from New York. He's very powerful. Why? He raised a lot of money. But there's someone finally challenging him.
We need to have representation that advocates as fiercely for working class people as possible from this seat.
If candidates like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez even get a little bit of media attention outside of what the Young Turks does, they have an excellent chance of winning. She's gonna win, she's gonna win.
68% reporting.
The majority of Americans want Medicare for all. So I don't care what you and your corporate cronies want. What I care about is what the American people want.
We believe in total change. Everything runs on donor money. And that is what we will fight, and that is exactly why they don't like us.
We're having fun, it's election night!
Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez has defeated Joe Crowley.
Here we go again!
Ladies and gentlemen, we got him.
Down goes Crowley! Down goes Crowley! Down goes Manafort! Down goes Cohen! Women came out in record numbers in the primaries. They said, you'll be lucky to get one candidate. We now have 12 that have won their primaries. Bezos and Amazon announcing that they are going to go to a 15-hour minimum wage.
We're making progress. Let's keep going.
Many of these women made history.
The biggest victories, all women of color. Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, Sharice Davids and Deb Haaland.
And I want to go to Congress because I want to change those things.
I'm calling it. Jamal Bowman has won. Down goes Engel. Down goes Engel.
For a long time, we have not had progressives in power. It's going to be something to behold.
Welcome to Happy Hour, everybody. After a week of soul-crushing news, we break out the good stuff. Good news, good videos, good people, and of course, drink good alcohol. That's the worst thing I've ever had.
This is the best show.
Full disclosure, we did do a shot right before the show began. It says,
Let's
flamingo.
Flamingo.
The reason you had trouble with that word is it's not a word.
Okay.
This is the one of everything.
I've got a rash. Could I just put it on that to see if it'll take it off?
What did you used to think this was?
Bull piss.
Drink it, swallow it,
No.
spit it. Oh, that's needed after a day like this. Cheers to Brett Ehrlich. Climax. Uranus smells like farts. Because of course it does. This is the worst sketch ever of a perp. But guess what, ladies and gentlemen? They found the guy. This is Sophie's super happy dog story of the week.
This dog is so precious and deserves the world. I'm just not drinking that beer.
Here's my dog. This is Onyx.
Yeah, I would just say that he's exotic because he's not your traditional dog. Still 12 out of 10 because they're all good.
Well, if that made you happy, just wait till you see the best thing ever of the week. There is a woman who moves like a horse.
Why do I want to go home and like try this?
We're actually gonna show you the running butthole challenge right now. What's happening? No, that's just wrong. Every way. And we'll see you next time.
Hey, Dave. As you can probably see, Skype froze. Frozen crashed.
You know, I'm watching that documentary on the Vietnam War, and there was a TV journalist in the middle of some tiny little village in Vietnam doing live TV as the soldiers were burning the Vietnamese huts, and it didn't crash. And that was 1965, and he was in Vietnam.
So why is matching funds so great? Why are you so excited about it?
Well, I mean, because you've read the books, my first preference is vouchers. That's what I think is the big idea. And I think that this is taking a step towards that by having a pilot program for vouchers. But the reason I think vouchers are extraordinarily good and matching funds are really good is that both of those ways of raising money incentivize candidates to reach out to many, many people to fund their campaigns, instead of relying on a handful of large contributions, where they learn how to suck up to the most powerful interests in America to raise the money they need to get to Congress, spending 30 to 70% of their time raising money. Instead of doing that, they have to turn to people, ordinary people, and raise money in small contributions. Now, $100 is still a lot of money to most Americans, which is why I prefer vouchers as a complement to matching funds. But there's, we did a town hall with Bernie at the end of the campaign where he came out strongly for vouchers, and he said, "Look, I'm for matching funds. That's great," but he gave the most compelling 10-minute account, better than anything I've ever seen, of why vouchers would radically improve the participation of ordinary people in politics. And that's the thing we need to be aiming for. We need to be aiming for a world where everybody has an incentive, a stake, and wants to participate in the funding and in the voting. And that's what these changes would enable.
So the matching funds are very easy to understand. As Professor Lessig was alluding to there, you give $100, all of a sudden it's $600. And it doesn't take away the Koch brothers money or the Mercer money or any other money, but it at least allows people to get in the game. And as we've seen with Just Democrats and other progressive wins, it turns out you could win with small dollar donations, and now this would supercharge that, and it would massively put us in the game. And by us, I don't mean progressives in this case. I just mean the American people. It will also, the Republicans get the same 6-1. Matt Gaetz will get, and Louis Gohmert, they'll all get the same 6-1. And I know that there are some Democrats who don't like that as well. I don't want them getting empowered. Well, that's not how democracy works. We both get empowered, or neither one of us does. So, but for vouchers, I think some folks might not know exactly how that works. So can you tell us how that one works?
Yeah, so Seattle has demonstrated this now for 2 election cycles. It's basically the government gives everybody something like coupons, vouchers that are worth a certain amount of money. Bernie was supporting $50 vouchers. Kirsten Gillibrand was supporting $200 for every federal election. So it's basically money that's handed over for a single purpose. That's to help fund campaigns. So you can give it to your favorite candidate. If you don't give it to any candidate, it just reverts back to the government to be used for democracy improvement work. But you get to decide who the money goes to. So, you could say it's government money you're giving, but we need to embrace our inner Tea Party here. Whose money is the government's money? It's our money. We're getting our money back from the government, and we're giving this money to candidates so they get to fund their campaigns. So everybody will have that resource, not just the relatively rich, the tiny fraction, the couple of percent who actually give $100 or more to congressional candidates. And that would be the game changer. But look, matching funds is the camel's nose under the tent. Once we start down this path and we have a clear vision with this pilot program, we have more fights to have, but we will have fights on an easier and easier playing field, because everybody will be bought into the idea that they're better off trying to raise money from tens of thousands of people rather than raising money from less than 1,000.
Right. So tell us about the pilot program. How would that work? Where are they going to try it? And if, how do we know if it's successful? And then where would they take it after that?
Well, the bill says there'll be a number of states, I think it's 4, that get to pick to participate in the voucher program. It's really underspecified exactly how it gets implemented. So I think there's a lot of work to make sure it's done well in a scientific sense, done well in a sense that doesn't, convince Democrats this is bad for Democrats, or Republicans that it's bad for Republicans. So it's a lot of work in the details about how this gets implemented. But the ideal, let's try it, let's see what we can do with it, is extremely important. And I think we should be excited that it's part of this bill.
Yeah, so now comes the part where I'm worried. The Democrats must pass the voting rights provisions. It would be political suicide not to. And as frustrated as I get with the Democratic Party, even I don't think that they're that incompetent. So they've got to do some sort of filibuster reform, because it does not qualify for reconciliation. So they need 60 votes if they don't reform the filibuster. Now they're talking about an a democracy exception to the filibuster. I'm conflicted on that because on the one hand, I want HR 1 to pass, so I would love any exception to a filibuster. On the other hand, that's obviously done so they don't have to pass any other progressive economic legislation. So they can say, oh, well, God, there's nothing we can do about $15 minimum wage, but hey, this thing that helps us get elected, we just happen to pass that. So I'm curious what your take on the so-called democracy exception, which I think was invented yesterday, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, my view is I think the filibuster is ridiculous. Basically, people representing or senators representing 12% of the American people have the ability to block legislation. 12%. I mean, how is that a democracy? So I think the filibuster is ridiculous. Its history has been embarrassing. It's just something that should not be part of our system. So the long term is, how do we get rid of the filibuster? How do we change the frickin' Senate? I mean, it's a ridiculous institution. Okay, but the question is, what do we do to save ourselves from the demise that will happen if we don't pass something before 2022? So don't pass something in the next 4 months. If it doesn't pass in the next 4 months, it doesn't matter in 2022. So I think whatever they can do to get an exception from the filibuster, the idea would be eliminating it, but getting an exception would be fantastic. The real problem is, like, what are they gonna compromise on? And here's where I think you and I share this anxiety. The Democrats have learned how to raise money. They did a really great job raising money in 2020. And there's a fear that a number of them are like, hey, wait a minute, we've perfected this machine. Why are you gonna break it just at the moment we've perfected it? So there's this motive by a bunch of the kind of more conventional Democrats. And then there's this, I just think, absurd argument being propagated by people like Rick Hasen and Ned Foley, friends of mine, law professors. But their argument is that the only way to pass this bill is to strip it down to the core provisions, voting rights, maybe gerrymandering. That is a fundamental mistake. And I don't mean a moral mistake, I mean a political mistake. Because this bill attracts Democrats from across the spectrum. And there are people who care about every provision in this bill, but they don't all care about the same provisions. So, if you're from a Democrat from Georgia, you care about voting rights because you've seen the games that can be played. But if you're a Democrat from Nebraska, what do you care about voting rights? Because they don't play that kind of game in Nebraska. Or gerrymandering, Iowa. They don't care about gerrymandering, right? Well, they don't do gerrymandering because they have a nonpartisan commission forever. So the point is, we need a bill that can attract excitement from everybody. And the issue that excites everybody is the issue you've been talking about longer than I have. The issue that excites everybody is this is a corrupted government and we have to fix it. And the thing that fixes it is the campaign finance. It's a step in the direction of fixing it. If they cut that out, that will be a fundamental compromise that we should be furious about, because it's not only not necessary, it actually makes the voting rights part more vulnerable. Joe Manchin is a supporter of public funding. When he was governor of West Virginia, he pushed to publicly fund judicial elections. He's been an outspoken critic of the system where a tiny number of people fund congressional campaigns. So I don't think we should be, this is a classic thing Democrats do, negotiating against ourselves. Here we are negotiating against ourselves. We should be going in there saying every single jot and tittle of HR 1 should be passed and fight like, can I say the word hell? I'm gonna say it anyway, yeah. Fight like hell until we get it passed, and there should be no compromise at all until unless it's absolutely necessary, and it's just not necessary now.
Well, Larry, we keep having debates, these nonsensical debates with people inside the establishment, because these are anti-corruption measures. Anti-corruption polls #1 in the country out of all issues, even healthcare in the middle of the pandemic. Everyone hates corruption, and Republican voters hate it the most. So, and here comes, through the looking glass, Jennifer Rubin in the Washington Post writing, well, if we want to preserve the bill, we got to take out the anti-corruption parts. Now you're talking about law professors taking out the anti-corruption parts. It's absurd. You're going to take out the most popular provisions that both parties' voters agreed to in order to pass it. No, it just, in a sense, Larry, doesn't it give away the game? That reality is the corporate Republicans and Democrats don't think that it's an issue of popularity. They enjoy the corruption. That's what got them their position in the first place. If you won by having massive corporate money on your side, you don't really want the other guy being able to raise 6 to 1 or to give money through a voucher program. And if they do kill it, that's the real reason why they're going to kill it, isn't it?
It is. You're right. And we should raise holy hell if they do. And we should talk about what the next steps are, because the democratic process would have failed at that point. But until we're there, I think we just have to make people aware of how extraordinary this would be. My brand is pessimism. I've been as dark as you have been for as long as you've known me. But this is the closest we have been in 2 generations to fundamental reform here.
All right, Professor Larry Lessig from Harvard Law School. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Great to be here, Cenk.
Welcome to the Young Turks. Jake Ugradek is paired with you guys. Oh, hey. She's back. All right, everybody, take a deep breath. Everything's gonna be all right. The captain is back on board, and the ship will be steadied. So, Casper, good to have you back.
It's good to be back, although I will admit, I did catch a few episodes of the live show while I was on vacation, and they were really good. They were really good. I was sweating a little bit. I'm like, man, we need to find some bad fill-in hosts. That way I look even better. I don't have to like worry about anything. But no, I mean, you guys hit it out of the park. So good work all around.
Yeah, you know what? I'll immediately tease the postgame for you guys. We'll do a fun, tiny thing in the postgame where I'll tell you MSNBC hosts who minded having good fill-in hosts and ones who did not mind having good fill-in hosts. Joroms. Hit the join button below if you're listening on YouTube. TYT.com/join for everyone else. All right, let's get started with today's news, Anna.
All right, well, this is a monster of a story, but we do need to give you some detailed info on what's happening with Biden's immigration policy. So, the GOP is on the warpath against Biden, even as he takes a pretty hardline approach on immigrants at the border. Now, Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas defended the Biden administration by touting his unwillingness to allow asylum seekers into the country during the coronavirus. Let's take a look at what he had to say over the weekend.
We heard the sheriff say it, the governor say it, and the migrants I spoke to say it. They are coming across because they believe they will be welcomed under the Biden administration. You said yourself 3 weeks ago, we're not saying don't come, we're saying don't come now. President Biden had a stronger message later, but the messages are mixed at best, Mr. Secretary.
The message is quite clear, do not come. The border is closed, the border is secure. We are expelling families. We are expelling single adults. We are encouraging children not to come. Now is not the time to come. Do not come. The journey is dangerous. We are building safe, orderly, and humane ways to address the needs of vulnerable children. Do not come.
So what he's referring to there is, families coming to the border, adult migrants coming to the border. However, in regard to unaccompanied minors, while he's clearly discouraging them from coming to the border, the Biden administration has been clear in stating that they will not immediately deport them or send them back. And that's because they want to take a more compassionate approach. And the problem is that in doing these half measures, right? In trying to appeal to the scaremongering that's being put out there by the right wing, what the Biden administration is doing is losing on both sides. You have the left that's furious with the fact that there are 15,000 migrant children in US custody right now. They're being placed in many of the facilities that obviously we had problems with under the Trump administration, and for me personally, I have a problem with under the Biden administration as well. At the same time, the argument that Biden has opened the borders and has allowed migrants to flow into the country, unmitigated, that is a lie coming from the Republican Party. And just to summarize this, and I'll give you more details to kind of prove what I'm trying to say here. Let's be clear, both sides are not being completely honest with what's really going on at the border right now. Before I give you more details, Cenk, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so I'll jump in with a detail. So there was something called Title 42. That was an emergency declaration that was done around March of last year by Trump administration saying because of the COVID virus, we're going to expel everyone that comes to the border. Normally they would be brought in, detained, and they would go through a certain process, right? And here he ended the process altogether. Now, before he left office, a judge ruled that you can't do that for kids, unaccompanied kids that are at the border. And so he stopped doing it, and so Biden took over, and basically on that note has followed Trump completely. So he didn't want to expel unaccompanied minors in the first place. Biden didn't, but still nothing actually changed as he took over. So we do have the kids brought in now. They're just unaccompanied. If they're with a family, everybody gets expelled. So if you're on the left and you want the immigrants to go through a certain process and not just be automatically expelled. Well, right now, Biden has the same exact policy as Trump. So I guess you should be furious about that. And if you're on the right, other than trying to make giant political hay out of this, which you've succeeded at, on this note, I don't know what you're complaining about. It is identical to Trump's policy when Trump left office.
Right, exactly. And I'm happy that you mentioned what the federal courts had indicated regarding unaccompanied minors, because whether Trump wanted to immediately deport them or not, that was struck down. And again, that happened prior to Biden taking office. So it's not Biden's policy to keep the unaccompanied minors in these facilities rather than immediately deport them. That was the policy that was obviously the result of the federal courts chiming in on it. The other thing to kind of bear in mind is that Biden did, in fact, campaign on a more compassionate strategy, right, when it comes to immigration. And one of the things that he wanted to implement but wasn't able to do was a 100-day ban on all deportations. But a Trump-appointed judge struck that down. They appealed and it was struck down again. So he wasn't actually able to implement the 100-day ban on deportations. But there are other issues with how the Biden administration is tackling this as well, including not being completely honest with the American people. The video that you're about to watch, again featuring Mayorkas, gives you yet another example of that. Let's take a look.
Did you change the policy too quickly without having the infrastructure in place to take care of these children?
We are executing on our plan. It does take time. It is difficult, but it is taking time and it is difficult because the entire system was dismantled by the prior administration. There was a system in place in both Republican and Democratic administrations that was torn down during the Trump administration, and that is why the challenge is more acute than it ever has been before. We are rebuilding the orderly systems that the Trump administration tore down to avoid the need for these children to actually take the perilous journey.
But the truth is that the Trump administration didn't dismantle the immigration system. What they did do was make it incredibly difficult for asylum seekers to actually get asylum. In fact, they effectively banned asylum seeking. So if anyone tried to go through the legal means in order to get into the country through a port of entry, for instance, Border Patrol severely limited the migrants' ability to do that, right? So if you want to consider that dismantling it, well, just reverse that. That's not a difficult thing to undo, right? But the problem is, on one hand, you have Mayorkas saying, no, we're turning everyone back unless they're unaccompanied minors. Okay, well, that's the decision that the Biden administration is making. On the other hand, they're blaming Trump for dismantling a well-oiled machine that dealt with asylum seekers, and that's just not true. Don't get me wrong, Trump was awful when it came to asylum seekers. In fact, the US Border Patrol apprehended nearly 100,000 migrants at the US border in February, the 10th consecutive month of increased apprehensions and a turn to levels last seen in mid-2019. There is an increase in the flow of migrants coming to the border. There's no question about that. But the Biden administration, the problem is they haven't really reversed the Trump administration's policies. The only thing that it might seem like they reversed is the issue with the unaccompanied minors. But again, that was something that was already implemented based on a court ruling, on a federal judge's ruling before Biden was elected. It's just, this is a difficult, complicated situation. And I think the Biden administration is having a difficult time really committing to one strategy. Either they're gonna be compassionate and deal with this completely differently than Trump, or they're gonna do these half measures where they're trying to pander to voters in this country who have been terrified by migrants thanks to the rhetoric coming from conservatives in the country, or they're not gonna win with Republicans. There's no way. They're gonna try to pander just like Obama did, and it's not gonna work. And I know I just mentioned Obama, but one more thing, Cenk. Biden made it clear that he wanted his immigration strategy to be much more compassionate than Obama's. he felt that the Obama administration made many mistakes in taking a hardline approach against migrants, right? But at the same time, when you look at what's being done in practice, it actually is very similar to how the Obama administration handled it. In fact, they've opened some of the facilities that the Obama administration was using to detain these minors. The problem is you do have a flow of unaccompanied minors coming into the country looking for safety. The Biden administration wants to be compassionate and not turn them away. And at the same time, they are deporting everyone else, including families who come to the border.
So in terms of the structural and legal system, I'm sure that Trump did some damage. You remember the quotes he used to have about judges. So why do we need judges? I don't even want judges, right? And so when you have a moron like that in charge, obviously he's going to corrode the system we have in place. On the other hand, I agree with Anna because of facts. So most of that is still in place, and they're going to need some time to ramp up. But Biden's chief of staff also said, "Oh my God, they handed us a record low number of beds for unaccompanied minor children." Well, that's not true either. Under Obama, at one point there was only 2,000 beds. When Trump left, there was 13,000 beds. So yes, it was dipping from the height of a year before that under Trump, which was at 16,000, but that's not a record low number of beds. So that's basically making excuses. And I get it, you got to ramp up real quick and change these policies and then move them to detention centers that are not cruel. And these are hard logistical challenges. So let's be fair about that. At the same time, we've got to hold them accountable for reality. Anna, I actually think now going to political analysis, I'll back this up with numbers in a sec, but the Biden administration might actually be annoyed at the left for not attacking them enough on this issue. Because my guess is that they did a classic Biden strategy of trying to appear reasonable by straddling the middle. We'll mainly follow Trump's policies, but we'll talk about kids in cages, but we won't let the media see that we're housing the kids in similar places. And then so we'll have the right wing attack us just because they hate immigrants and they were gonna attack us no matter what, even if we did everything that Trump did. And we'll have the left attack us for really not changing much. And then we'll seem so reasonable. And in the entirety of the press will back us on that. Oh, poor Joe Biden, he's the reasonable center. But in this case, the left hasn't spoken out much. So it's just right-wing attacks. So that's the whole conversation now nationally. There's almost no progressive critique that I'm seeing. It's all, has Biden been brutal enough to the immigrants? And plus, we're really mad that he's not letting us take pictures and video. So just a couple of quick facts about that. Look, when you say, well, Biden's letting unaccompanied children in. Yeah, for a long time, Trump was trying to stop that. That's definitely true. And he had expelled 3,200 kids in October alone that had come unaccompanied. And he said, just go back. We're not allowing you in. But because of court orders, by December, that had fallen to just 3. And in January, it was just 18 kids who were expelled by Trump. So there's not that much of a difference between 3, 18, and 0, which is what Biden's at, and they're following court orders. So it's not like Biden's doing something heroic by following what the judge's orders that Trump followed, right? And then finally, on the expulsions, remember, everyone but the unaccompanied kids gets expelled under the Title 42 that Biden's doing. So in February, when Biden was in charge, of the 100,000, more than 100,000 encounters at the border, 72,000 of those, in other words, the overwhelming majority, were immediately expelled with no hearings, no process, or anything. So let's keep it real. The Republicans are obviously exaggerating at a minimum about the height of the problem, and it was all Biden's fault, etc. No, he's following largely Trump's policies. On the other hand, Biden doesn't get to brag about how great he's been to immigrants when you've barely changed anything.
And Cenk, let me be clear about one other thing. I don't know if you're referring to progressives in Congress not holding Biden's feet to the fire. If you are talking about that, then you're right. I haven't particularly seen any progressive lawmakers go after Biden on his immigration policies, at least aggressively. But in terms of progressive media, I have seen quite a bit of critique. I have seen a lot of criticism. I mean, Jordan Ewell's a great example. Jordan Ewell, I go to his Twitter account when I want to stay up to date on what the latest is regarding, Biden's, latest foibles in dealing with the immigration issue at the border. However, the media, I feel, has chosen to really amplify the criticisms coming from disingenuous right-wing actors, and that's an issue. Because what it does is really pressure the Biden administration to continue pandering to people who have no interest in giving Biden credit for anything. If Biden decided to take unaccompanied minors and tell them to turn around, right? In fact, started shooting at them as they're turning around and going back, it still wouldn't make the right wing happy in this country. My point is, Biden, you're not supposed to be pandering to the right wing. You campaigned on a compassionate approach on migration, then deal with it in a compassionate way. Stop with the half measures. It's not helping the situation.
Yeah, look, I love what you said, but I actually think the main culprit there is not at all Biden. It's the mainstream media. And so why? Biden's a bellwether. You're not gonna change Biden. Biden floats with the wind. That's what he's done his entire career. So, but the mainstream media thinks a right-wing line of attack on Biden on immigration is perfectly credible and reasonable, and they will talk about it non-stop. They think a progressive critique of Biden on almost anything is illegitimate and not credible. So it sends an uneven playing field. So Washington Post, New York Times, etc., all they'll talk about is right-wing critique on most issues, and definitely this one. So then Biden thinks, I guess there's no pressure from the left. I read the Washington Post and the New York Times this morning, and I listened to NPR on the way in. If he's still, I think he lives there, but at the White House. And I didn't hear a peep out of the left. Well, yeah, because they filtered our voice out. And Jordan, look, we think Jordan Ewell's so great. We gave him a show on Twitch, Deep Dive. You should check it out. But the rest of the media, honestly, just thinks we're all invisible. And without their coverage, we cannot be a balancing act in Joe Biden's bellwether, and that makes him lean right wing almost every time.
Yeah, and I'm gonna say one final thing, and this will be the final thing in the video, Cenk. Media, instead of just regurgitating what both sides are saying, can you do a little bit of fact checking? Like, this story was a disaster to research because no one actually does the fact checking, right? You might find some standalone pieces that are like buried in, the 28th page of whichever paper you're reading, but it's so impossible to try to decipher which side is lying and which side is telling the truth. And I want to be clear, both sides in this particular story right now are not being honest. Speaking of not being honest, we got to talk about Dan Crenshaw, who's not really known for being an honest person, but we have the latest example, which is a doozy. So Mehdi Hasan was recently interviewing Representative Dan Crenshaw, someone who can't stand immigration and felt the need to lie to the American people in multiple conservative news interviews about what the Biden administration is doing in response to the uptick in migration at the southern border. Now, Mehdi Hasan starts this clip by sharing a very important piece of information to Dan Crenshaw, and just get a load of how he doesn't really want to acknowledge it.
You made these claims on Fox News last week. Have a listen.
This happened overnight, okay, when President Biden rescinded the Remain in Mexico policy, when they rescinded the asylum cooperation agreements with the Northern Triangle countries, when they said, hey, we're not going to deport you when you come. So Biden has the nerve to say quietly, hey, don't come, wink, don't come here, don't come here. If you come here, we're going to give you a bus ticket wherever you want, and we're not going to deport you.
I'll come back to your Remain in Mexico and asylum cooperation agreement points in a moment. But the rest of that, Congressman, is just not true. How can you say the Biden administration isn't deporting people? Last month, nearly 3 out of 4 people encountered at the border were expelled straight away under Title 42. 72% of people encountered at the border last month, apprehended, were instantly expelled. So how is what you said on Fox true? It isn't.
Look, over the course of 2020, 1,000 people came illegally into the U.S. and then were released in the interior of the U.S. And in just the year 2021, it's 20,000. Right, it just comes straight out of Border Patrol. I was just down there a couple of weeks ago. So again, there are very specific instances of policy reversals that have caused a massive spike in illegal immigration and people incentivized to come across our border. I'm not sure why we're debating that point. I think we should debate what to do about it.
I'm wondering why you went on Fox and say people are not being deported when 72% of the people apprehended at the border last month were deported under Joe Biden. Can you deal with that point?
Like you just played what I said. I never said nobody was getting deported. And so look, our system works fairly well. You just played what I said, and I know I didn't say that.
All right, we have a continuation of that dumpster fire in just a minute, but I want to be clear in that what Crenshaw and the right wing are putting out there is this notion that there's been an uptick in migrants coming to the border under the Biden administration specifically, because he's the one giving them a wink and a nod, essentially indicating that he has the border open and ready for them, when that is not the case. In fact, in that same interview, Mehdi Hasan read some statistics coming from Customs and Border Patrol, indicating that there's been an increase in migrants coming to the border for the last 9 months, meaning that this trend was happening under the Trump administration. So to say that Biden has created a situation in which he has done away with deterrence and is encouraging people to come at the border is just flat out false.
So let me break it down in two different categories. So there's the families that are coming. They are treated exactly the same way under Biden and Trump. They're both using Title 42. They expel them immediately because of COVID concerns. They do not go through the regular process they used to, okay? That's been in place for over a year now, and Biden is doing the same exact thing with Trump. With grown adults, same exact policy. Title 42, Biden and Trump, absolutely equal. That is why Mehdi Hasan's numbers are correct. 72,000 people have been expelled without any process at all. The left should arguably be furious about that, but there hasn't been much of a peep from progressive legislators on that, from what I've seen. Maybe I'm being unfair there. If they're saying it, they're certainly not being picked up by the press. Now, the thing that appears to be different, but is not exactly different, is unaccompanied minors. Now, it was Trump's policy that he wanted to expel them as well. He didn't want to let them in the country. It was Biden's agenda that they would be let into the country and go through regular process because they didn't want to send kids by themselves back through that treacherous path back to their homes where they could die and be in danger. But the reality is that the courts ruled that the kids must be let in. So Trump started letting them in before his term was over. So he was expelling more than 3,000 kids in October, but then it became nearly nothing by December and January. So only 3 in December, for example. So now in Biden's case, he's at similar numbers to Trump. He's just following the same court order that Trump was. So when Crenshaw says, "Oh my God, I can't believe what Biden decided to do," no, the courts decided it. Trump followed that order, which is good, and Biden is also following the same order. So let's be clear about who made the decision and how that played out. Now, because the court ordered it, at this point in February, for example, there was 9,400 times that unaccompanied children were met at the border. So that is a higher number than it used to be over the last year. Now you could say, hey, I actually think the right wing has a slight point here, that it's because the coyotes will then go back and tell everybody, oh my God, right or wrong, Biden is letting everybody in or whatever it is because they want to get more business. They'll bring kids. But remember, they would have said that about the court order anyway, because Trump had to do the same exact thing and did do the same exact thing in the last several months of his administration. So, and even then, so 9,400 sounds like a lot more than it used to be. And yes, over the last years it is, but the last time it was that number was in May of 2019. So about 2 years ago when it was under Trump. So is there some like, oh my God, deluge of unaccompanied minors like no one's ever seen? Well, if you have short-term memory loss, I guess that's true. Otherwise, you just look back to May of 2019 and it's the same number.
All right, well, we got to take a break. Let's do that. And when we come back, we have more news for you guys, including Tom Cotton getting caught in a lie on live television, some GOP on GOP violence. Also, something that's never happening, but the media keeps teasing it as if it might. So we have that and more for you when we come back.
guys, will you be our shorty? We're in the Shorty Awards, and we need your help as usual, okay? And this crowd voting, that's why we usually win. You guys are the best of the best. Let's do it again. And here, for once, we can actually stuff the ballots because you can vote every day. So what you're gonna do is go to tyt.com/shorties. It's a 13th annual awards. You can vote every day up until March 31st, and get an extra vote when you share it on Facebook and Twitter. That's super easy. So we're finalists for live event coverage for our 2020 election coverage. I would love to win that just so we could send it to the right wing. Oh, is this a meltdown? Sorry. Did we win an award for our election coverage? I guess, if that happens, okay? And you guys can make that happen. tyt.com/shorties, Facebook, Twitter, every day. Too easy, too easy. But we can just do it now. Don't worry about tomorrow. All right, let's go to our members. Mickey C. the Silver says, the Silver Dragon. What do you think about Biden issuing a gag order to ICE regarding the border? Trump is gone, right? Yeah, lots of gag orders, lots of not showing people. You know why? Because you're gonna see very similar pictures that you saw under Trump. That's why Biden doesn't want the media there. Keep it real. Someone who likes Bernie Sanders wrote in, we're not saying don't come, we're saying don't come right now, quoting the administration. That's all well and good on our side of the border, but it's not like these families are just chilling at home waiting for us to say to come in. Asylum 100%. Seekers are fleeing. They don't have time for us to get our mess together. So that's why I say smartest audience in the world, because that's exactly right. Isn't that amazing that no one on television ever makes that point? It's stunning. Anyway, JM Frazier writes in, this is all in our member section, tyt.com/join to be a member on the Young Turks website. And you get all of our content, obviously. Anyway, JM writes in, Biden 2020, take a narrow stance in the middle and upset voters on all sides of the issues. Doesn't seem like a winning strategy, but that's what he seems to be going with. For now, by the way, to be fair, it is working. His popularity is pretty high. We do the news, so we to report the news, whether it suits us or not, whether it suits Democrats or not as well. Anyway, so now I want to thank the folks who just joined on YouTube: Saren Anabis Ra, Asha and Natalie Blue Ridge Mountain, Art and Provisions. Oh, that's fun. And Andy, just Andy. Hey, he's just Andy being Andy. They all joined. Are they American heroes? I guess you could be likewise. Hit the join button below the video if you're watching on YouTube. That Bernie bro writes in on YouTube super chat. I took a break from the news because it was making me extremely anxious, but I'm back. Missed you guys. Hope you've all been well. We've been great. Dade Murphy says, you guys only speak on big facts. Corporate media could learn a lesson or two on how to report the news. Hashtag TYT for life. Back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Casper, go.
All right, well, story that caught my attention today. Michael Sherwin is the federal prosecutor who's been overseeing the Justice Department's investigation into the riots that took place in the Capitol on January 6th. Now, recently he sat down to talk about some of the evidence that he's seen and what's likely to happen in regard to charges. He also teased something regarding Donald Trump that I found infuriating because the media ran with it. But before we get to that, what are some of the charges that the rioters might face? He talks about that in this clip. Take a look.
2 days after Michael Sherwin stepped down from supervising the investigation into the riots, he said in an interview aired Sunday night on 60 Minutes that prosecutors are getting closer to filing just such a charge.
I personally believe the evidence is trending towards that and probably meets those elements.
The former interim US attorney in Washington, Sherwin says he was in the crowd on January 6th.
You could see it was getting more riled up. Where it was initially pro-Trump, it digressed to anti-government, anti-Congress, anti-institutional. When I saw people climbing up the scaffolding, hanging from it, hanging flags, I was like, this is going bad fast.
Now, what he's saying there is that it's likely, based on the evidence that they've already accumulated, that some of these anti-government rioters would be facing sedition charges. That doesn't surprise me. I think that that's likely to happen. Keep in mind that 400 people have now been charged for their involvement in the riots that day. But then he moves on to the issue of Donald Trump possibly facing some criminal charges. And I want to read what he says slowly and carefully so you guys can really understand what he's saying here, okay? And why the way the media has covered it has been ridiculous. He says, it's unequivocal that Trump was the magnet that brought the people to DC on the 6th. Remember, he did that rally prior to the riot breaking out. But then he says this, we have plenty of people. We have soccer moms from Ohio that were arrested saying, quote, well, I did this because my president said I had to take back our house. That moves the needle towards that direction. Maybe the president is culpable for those actions. And then the media pretends like the rest of the statement was never made, but it was. He also says, but also you see in the public record too, militia members saying, quote, you know what? We did this because Trump just talks a big game. He's just all talk. We did what he wouldn't do. Look, my point is, it doesn't matter what CNN has to say, it doesn't matter what the New York Times has to say, it doesn't matter what anyone has to say. Let's just be clear right now so we don't continue having this ridiculous conversation. Trump will not ever face criminal charges for what happened in the Capitol, okay? That's it, end of story, end of discussion. I know that the media is looking to like, let's milk the Trump story as much as we can. Milk, milk, milk. The DOJ will do nothing. Donald Trump will not face any criminal charges. The idiots who follow Donald Trump's demands, they will face criminal charges, some of whom are gonna be charged with sedition. But Trump himself, free to go. Doesn't matter what he said, doesn't matter what the public record indicates. Free to go, period. Anyway, Cenk.
Well, I'll go a little further. I actually think Trump should not be charged with sedition. Okay, we've got a poll up on YouTube on that. You go to our channel and then you hit community and you'll be able to vote on that poll. But let me make my case. So first off, I wanna clarify the different charges that people could face. As Anna told you, over 400 people have been charged already. The lowest charge is trespassing. It's not that big a deal. That's a slap on the wrist in effect. A serious charge is conspiracy. And people could get up to 5 years for that. And a little over 10% of the rioters have been charged with conspiracy already. And they have good evidence from the 3%ers, the Oath Keepers, and some of the Proud Boys that they actually did plan to do this. And so that's a significant charge. But even so, max of 5 years when they're chanting, hang the vice president as they walk in, and they're looking to find Nancy Pelosi, and God knows what they would have done to her or AOC, et cetera. It still seems low. Sedition, no one's been charged yet. Will some of the rioters who are charged with conspiracy also be charged with sedition? Probably. Should the president? Well, let's read you what Pelley read Sherwin. And this is a statute on sedition. Sedition is interpreted in a lot of different ways, but here's a quote. Sedition occurs when anyone opposes by force the authority of the United States, or by force hinders or delays the execution of any law of the United States. First of all, on the second half of that, I don't think anyone should ever be charged with that. When you say it hinders or delays the execution of a law, oh boy, cops could use that to cast a very wide net on a lot of political activity. Well, I mean, we had a law and you caused us a 5-minute delay in executing it through your protest, you're seditious. I don't want any piece of that. That's garbage, and I don't think anybody should be charged with that, no matter where they are on the political spectrum. In terms of using force against the United States government, that's the core of sedition. Well, certainly a lot of those rioters appear to have met that threshold as you're breaking down the door of the Capitol, chanting about executing political opponents and walking into the building looking to find those political opponents. In terms of Trump, he did not break into the Capitol. Did he encourage them? Of course he did. But if you so I'm not having a silly conversation about, Trump, golly gee, what would he know about any of this? No, he lied to them over and over and over again about how the election was stolen. And he got them to believe ridiculous things. Did he spearhead that. Oh, yes, of course he did. But he just spoke. And you could break the law by speaking, but it has to be a much higher standard. Go break into that building and go hang Mike Pence. Yes, then you got to charge a sedition based on speech. But him saying fight like hell and walk down Pennsylvania Avenue, no, because if that's your standard on sedition, then oh boy, I hate to see who they would apply that to next. Again, anywhere in the political spectrum. So that's the community tab we're showing you there. It's really easy. Click on the Young Turks anywhere on YouTube, then go to the community tab and vote there. I'm curious what you guys think, because I imagine like a lot of you, or like us, a lot of you hate Trump and think he caused this, but I'm curious what you think he should actually legally be charged with sedition. Super last thing, Anna, is that he did commit a political crime, which is to encourage people to rebel against the actual laws of the United States of America. That's why I would have impeached him, but I would not have charged them legally with a crime. And there's a huge and important difference there.
Yeah, so I want to give you credit for actually thinking ahead and thinking about what the negative consequences could be in charging him and prosecuting him with sedition. I didn't even get that far in my thought process. And the reason why is because even if what he did was easy to prove as seditious, it doesn't even matter. I know I'm speculating here, but what we've seen over and over again in this country is power protects power. He was the former president of the United States. We've had many former presidents of the United States who have broken actual laws, committed war crimes, and didn't have to deal with any prosecution, didn't have to deal with the consequences of their actions. At least based on historical trends, no sitting president ever has to worry about suffering the consequences of the crimes he commits as soon as he's out of office. It's never gonna happen. And I get incredibly frustrated with the media pretending as though there's a possibility when we know without a shadow of a doubt that it's never gonna happen. That's just how our system is set up. The powerful protect the powerful. The only person who's kind of broken that trend is Trump himself, who shows no loyalty to anyone. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
But he's not the one who gets to make the prosecutorial decisions here.
Yeah, Anna, don't get me wrong. I wouldn't do a poll on whether Trump's gonna be charged. He ain't gonna be charged. Even if you think he's gonna be charged, you'd be wrong. There's no way that Democrats or current DOJ would have the guts to charge Trump, even if they should. And as we're telling you in the poll, we think it's a borderline case to begin with. So there ain't no way in the world they're gonna do that. I would fall out of my chair if they did. But I am still curious whether you guys think that what he did was actually seditious or not.
All right, well, we got to take a break, but when we come back, we have more news for you, including Senator Cotton getting in a little trouble when he was interviewed with Chris Wallace recently. And then later in the show, this is in the second hour, but I can't wait to talk about it. Yeah, we're gonna talk about Kylie Jenner, okay? But it's the intersection of wealth inequality and celebrity, okay? Don't miss it, come right back, we'll see you in a few.
All right, back on the Young Turks. You know, Alex in our member section made an interesting point, and that might get me to reverse my position. The only way I see Trump facing sedition charges is if evidence comes out that he was responsible for specifically delaying the National Guard from responding.
No, even if there's evidence of that, he will not be charged.
Oh no,
I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, Anna, don't get me wrong. It wouldn't change my mind on whether he's gonna get charged. It doesn't matter. They could have a telegram of him, like in the old days when I have a fax. I have a fax. They could have a fax of Donald Trump saying, "Please break into the Capitol and try to murder as many politicians as possible," and they still wouldn't charge him with sedition. Okay, but whether he should be charged or not, well, if he delayed the National Guard, damn, that's the exact definition of sedition. So I don't. That makes it a harder question, right? So anyways, I want to thank more folks who just signed up on YouTube. Quentin Anthony, Rose Jackson, Camille DePaulo. Are they now all American heroes? Well, I don't know that I guess. Okay, I think I might know. I'm just saying I might know. Okay, so keep it going, guys. We love it. You can upgrade through the same button. And on Twitch, you all know, of course, that if you have Amazon Prime, it's free for you, and we get the revenue anyway. If you're a member anywhere else, just jump over to twitch.tv/TYT, where, by the way, you will see some ass kickings on our programs. Not only Deep Dive with Jordan Uhl, as we told you about before, later tonight after our post game, Big Rick Energy is over there. But check that out. That's 8:30 p.m. Eastern. It's big, it's Rick, it's energy. So now, but you also would have seen Dr. Rashad Ritchie annihilate someone from Turning Point USA earlier today, okay? And some of you did see that, and that was an awesome show. It's called Indisputable. It's on right after Damage Report on Mondays. And Hottie Meter saw it and gifted 50 subs. She's like, "That is 50 subs, right?" And Hottie Meter, we didn't want you to think that we missed it. We saw it, and you're awesome, okay? And AJ Duenas just gifted 5 subs. Obi Mom Kenobi gifted 5 subs, of course, on both AJ and Obi Mom. Tempo Den gifted a sub. Look, these bits, I'm a fan of the bits. Mimosa Dragon gifted or gave 752 bits. That's a random number. A, I like random numbers. B, I don't like Mimosa's taste, but I like the idea of Mimosa. So keep it growing. Going and growing, apparently. Senna Sherry Bow Flight gave 2,000 bits, which adds up to a lot more than bits, but not to bots. Gray Ghost Dragon has been with us for 3 months using Amazon Prime. And 3rd month here, several on YouTube. See, doing both. Does that make you an extra hero? I guess. Okay, love you guys on Twitch. We'll be right back. Are we back? I guess. All right, Cenk Uygur Gasparyan with you guys on the Young Turks. Casper has the news. Let's do it.
Fox News' Chris Wallace is continuing his trend of actually asking some tough questions of Republican lawmakers. This was something that was pretty pronounced during the Trump administration, and now during an interview with Senator Tom Cotton, Wallace decided to call him out on a pretty clear lie. Let's hear how it went down.
Here is one of your other complaints about the COVID relief bill. Take a look, sir.
Look how crazy some of the Democratic ideas are. I mean, they had a chance on Saturday morning to stop checks from going to prisoners, from going to the Boston bomber, for instance. And on that vote, they declined. Every single Democrat wanted to continue the practice of sending checks to prisoners.
But Senator, under 2 previous COVID relief bills that you supported and voted for and that President Trump signed, prisoners also got checks in those bills.
Well, Chris, that was obviously never Congress's intent. The Trump administration, IRS, and Treasury Department did not send checks to prisoners. Liberal advocacy groups sued to try to force that. A liberal judge said they had to. this month was the first time we ever had a simple up or down vote on whether those checks should go to prisoners. And the simple fact is that every Democrat voted to keep sending checks to prisoners. I don't think that's a smart idea. I suspect most Americans don't either.
One of the next big pieces of legislation that
So we included that last part because Chris Wallace did not fact check Senator Cotton, although I'm giving him credit for, at least trying to ask a difficult question. He didn't ask a follow-up that would have been important in this context. But to be absolutely clear, both relief bills that passed under the Trump administration indicated that prisoners could in fact qualify for those coronavirus relief checks. And in both cases, you had Republicans like Senator Cotton voting in favor of it. I have a little more detail into how that all went down in just a minute. But Cenk, what do you make of this? Like, what do you make of Chris Wallace continuing this trend? Because it's not what Chris Wallace was known for prior to the Trump administration.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd dispute that, but I think overall you're right. I think I don't think it's just Chris Wallace. I think it's some portion of the mainstream media, and I hope they don't forget that instinct of challenging people in power. That's a muscle that they developed under Trump, because Trump is part of the elite, but he's not part of the establishment. The establishment is a machine built to help everyone in the elites, whereas Trump just wanted to help himself. So the establishment hated him for it, and so they told the media, "Hey, this is a rare situation where you should actually do your job and challenge the powerful." So they did it, and they've forgotten that they weren't supposed to do it. They will eventually remember, and they're beginning to remember. But we're in this pocket here where they actually are challenging Biden a little bit more, and Republican senators more. So I'll take it, and I hope that that bubble expands rather than shrinks, although I'm afraid that it's gonna shrink. And in this particular case, Cotton, as usual, is lying. Now, earlier in the program, we told you guys about how the Biden administration was also lying about immigration. So we're here to do the news. We're gonna tell you what's true or not true, and we're gonna back it up with numbers and facts. So in this particular case, Tom Cotton says, well, Congress did not intend to vote to give the prisoners checks. Well, Senator Cotton, you had a funny way of showing that, because you voted to give the prisoners checks twice under Trump, and you never objected. You never went on Fox News saying, "Oh, can you believe Trump is sending checks to the Boston bomber? What a monster Trump is." No, he's like, "Bravo, bravo, absolutely, I voted 100% with Trump. Let's go for some prisoners checks," right? Then Biden gets in office, you're like, "Oh, I am shocked and chagrined to find out that prisoners are getting checks, just like I voted for." Okay, so please spare us your totally 100% phony outrage. And this is not an issue where there's nuance. Tom Cotton is a systematic liar. He lies in the same exact way that Trump does, except he doesn't have as many insults, he doesn't have as much flair. He's a boring liar. So in other appearances, he also lied about how Joe Biden's now giving free healthcare to illegal immigrants, and he's promised it to everyone who's gonna come. Just an outrageous lie, not remotely true, right? So that's who Tom Cotton is.
So I want to give you guys specifics so you know exactly how the legislation went down under the Trump administration and how it's ridiculous for Cotton to make a big deal about this under the Biden administration. So again, neither the bill Trump signed with Cotton's support in March of last year, obviously, nor the bill Trump signed with Cotton's support in December of 2020 contained any language prohibiting prisoners from getting relief funding. But after the first stimulus bill passed last March, Republicans were like, "Oh, but we forgot to include the provision that would ban prisoners from getting any of this relief." And so they tried to get the IRS to belatedly prevent prisoners from qualifying for those checks. But then a federal judge comes in. So the Trump era the Trump era IRS did try belatedly to prevent prisoners from getting the money in the first bill, but tax law experts across the political spectrum said the IRS had no authority to do this given the text of the law and how it did not exclude prisoners. After prisoners filed a class action lawsuit, a federal judge ruled in October that the government had to let prisoners access the cash. So when it came to the second relief bill that passed in December of 2020, the IRS didn't even try it. The Trump administration didn't even try to include that provision. And then you have the third relief bill under the Biden administration has the same provisions in it in regard to prisoners. And all of a sudden Republicans are making a big deal about it. But it's all lies. It's all in the way that they're framing it. They were very supportive of Trump's legislation. They're just being political about what's happening now. And then one final thing I want to mention, Cenk, because it's important. After the 2008 economic collapse, you can recall that the Obama administration passed a relief bill. Obviously, it wasn't enough. It only furthered inequality in America. However, that legislation ensured that prisoners would not get that relief money at all, right? And the reason why I'm bringing that up is, did Republicans ever give Obama credit for that? I'm not saying that I would give credit to Obama for that. I'm just saying that Democrats pandering to disingenuous right-wingers never works out well. So don't do it. Don't do it. Don't ever do it. Don't do it in immigration policy. Don't do it in relief policy. These people are not your friends. They're never going to give you credit. In fact, even if you give them exactly what they want, they'll turn around and literally lie about it on national television.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing too. Conservatives argue in court all the time as their legal principle, plain reading of the statute. We don't want activist judges. The Congress wrote it and they intended what they wrote. That's it, right? That is a bedrock of conservative judicial theory. Now they're going, yeah, I mean, we wrote it and we all voted on it, but some of us kind of didn't mean it. And now we'd like to blame Biden, and even earlier, like, well, our bad. Basically, that's going into court and saying, sorry, we're incompetent and lazy, so we didn't really do our job right. And some of us would like to change our opinion after we voted yes on the bill. And the courts basically told them, that's not how it works. You guys read the bill, then you vote on the bill, and then the bill's the law. You don't get to say some of us didn't mean it later, okay? And is there a right way to object to a provision in a bill or to the whole bill while still voting for it? Yes. And the person who did the best job of that, in my opinion, is Bernie Sanders in the '94 crime bill, where he said, "Look, I have to vote for this bill because it's got the Violence Against Women Act in it, and I want that so much, and it's so important that I'm going to vote yes. But I'm going to give a stem winder of a speech here where I explain to you how awful the rest of this bill is, and that we should not do any of the other garbage parts of this bill, right?" And so that's where you go, okay, well, that guy was clear on what he wanted to vote yes on and what he didn't, right? Tom Cotton going on TV after Biden gets into office going, oh, well, yeah, remember, we were lazy and stupid before, and we didn't read the bill, and that's why I voted for it. But now I want to blame Biden for the thing I voted on. So can I get credit for that? And so we're now left in a media so in disrepair in this country that we're giving Chris Wallace credit for saying, no, you don't get credit for that, which is super obvious.
Exactly. All right, well, let's move on to what's currently going down with possible challengers to Governor Andrew Cuomo in New York. There was one GOP candidate, potential candidate, who's now backed out. So a GOP congressman who was planning to challenge New York Governor Andrew Cuomo is now apologizing after a lobbyist came forward with some pretty terrible allegations against him. So lobbyist, or former lobbyist, I should say, Nicolette Davis said that in 2017, New York Representative Tom Reed rubbed her back at a bar and unhooked her bra without consent. Davis, who was 25 years old at the time and a lobbyist for insurer Aflac, when she said Reed, seated next to her at a Minneapolis bar, unhooked her bra from outside her blouse and moved his hand to her thigh. Now she had evidence that this happened because at the time she had texted a coworker, and she said this: "A drunk congressman is rubbing my back." She texted a coworker at Aflac that evening, adding later, "Help, help," in all caps. And at first, Reed was pretty much denying her version of events. He said that what she was saying was not accurate, but he actually immediately took that back and apologized and said in a statement that the incident involving then lobbyist Nicolette Davis occurred at a time in my life in which I was struggling. He said he entered treatment that year and realized he was powerless over alcohol. He also apologized to his wife and children and to Davis, the former lobbyist, and said that he planned to, quote, dedicate my time and attention to making amends for my past actions. He was elected into Congress in 2010, but he will not seek re-election in 2022. And obviously he is not planning on challenging New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, but someone reputable and progressive absolutely should.
Okay, so this story has a couple of lessons in here. Number one, Andrew Cuomo is in a world of trouble because of sexual harassment charges. This guy, knowing what he's done in the past, throws his hat in the ring to oppose him anyway. To me, that's an indictment of the press, because that's this guy saying, the press has never held me accountable in my entire life. I've never known the press to hold anyone accountable in my entire life. And I, obviously they're doing it to Cuomo now, but that's because he's in the middle of a national maelstrom and kind of thrust himself into that spotlight. But I guess Reid's assumption was, oh yeah, all the sexual harassment I did, that'll never come to light. It's never come to light before. Why would it start now? So when the first story broke, he's like, oh, that's totally unexpected. Okay, so he at first tries to fight it, and then he realizes, nah, this ain't gonna work, and he gets the hell out. Now, second conclusion that you get out of this is he's quitting politics altogether. That means that story, as horrific as it is, unbuckling her bra, you don't know her in the middle of in a bar in public. Like, I can't imagine how much more of a lunatic you could be, but apparently he was, because you don't nuke your entire career unless there's a lot of those stories, and you're trying to get 100%. The hell out of Dodge before the rest of the stories break. Let me explain that's exactly what happened here. So if you think a Republican who had that kind of ambition, retires from politics based on one story, then you don't know anything about politics in this country. No, if a Republican nukes his career, that means what they were about to uncover is the most toxic sludge you've ever seen in your life.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I have the same speculation because there are really two potential paths to take once the first allegation comes out. And look, to be fair to the media, I guess in this case, Nicolette Davis didn't come forward until now, right? So it'd be weird if the media went on some sort of fishing expedition to see if like rando congressmen have done inappropriate things. I'm sure many of them have, but you can't really do that fishing expedition. You need a woman to actually come forward. And in this case, I'm really proud of her for doing this because we've seen how women have been treated in the press, not just by the perpetrators, but also by their supporters. And so, she came out, she made these allegations, she had evidence in the form of a text that she sent to a colleague at the time. And if Reid continued to deny it and took the Andrew Cuomo approach, well, then there's a pretty significant likelihood that more and more women are gonna come out, and it's gonna put his family through a lot. It's probably gonna put him through a lot, although I don't feel sorry for him at all. So yeah, I think that there are probably, and I'm speculating, some other skeletons in his closet. He doesn't want to deal with it. And so to stop the pain, he's just kind of decided to not just bounce from the possibility of challenging Andrew Cuomo, but just leave politics altogether. It's like, I don't think that her perspective of the events are accurate. And then within like a day, no, I'm sorry. Actually, I'm sorry. What I have to say about her version of events is irrelevant. I apologize to everyone, including Davis, and I will not be seeking re-election. I'm done. I'm over. Bye. That does seem to indicate that there's more going on that we know about. But look, alcoholism, drug addiction, those kinds of things are serious, and I hope he is getting the help that he needs, not just for himself, but for potential victims who have to deal with his disgusting behavior. And I'm glad that he won't be in politics anymore. I'm really proud of Nicolette Davis for coming forward.
Yeah, and remember guys, he's not even a local politician. He's a United States congressman from New York. He was thinking of having higher ambitions to go to governor of New York and then God knows what. And for him to turn around instantly from I'd like to run for governor to I'd like to end my career completely. man, I wish somebody would uncover whatever other skeletons he has in his closet, because my God, what did he do that he doesn't want you to know?
All right, we should probably take a break. That concludes hour one, but when we come back for hour two, we're gonna give you some updates on the tragic shootings that took place in Atlanta. Some of the victims were unfortunately further victimized by the police. We'll give you the details on that story and more. We'll see you in just a few minutes.
Came in late to watch TYT Old School, and I hear Cenk Uygur talking about napkins. Is this the kind of nonsense Ana Kasparian was talking about? Gotta love membership privileges. Gotta love them.
Please have Dave on every 4 episodes or so.
Watching Ben Mankiewicz and Cenk Uygur on Old School talking is exactly like watching Seinfeld and George. I'm not sure if that's a compliment.
Who's on Old School today? Is there one? At Dave Kohler. I hope it's not Brett Ehrlich.
This episode of Old School has killed me. Who knew a conversation about good and bad underwear could be so hilarious and relatable?
Couple things about this video. Dave Kohler looks so badass.
There's more than a 73% chance this Old School will be really funny. Cenk Uygur has been up since 4 a.m., so he's tired. Hence, everything will seem funnier to him. P.S. Remember, food talk, new words, and no or very little politics.
Dave Kohler, enjoyed performance on Old School. Can we please hear about your time as a geologist? One geologist to another?
I appreciate that all these people enjoy it, because I know Cenk loves to do it, and he does it because he knows the fans love it too.
This looks like a conspiracy. This looks like a scheme to defraud.
The Bush administration put folks into the regulatory agencies who believed in destroying regulations.
Memories of the Great Depression faded.
They stood on the floor of the Senate day after day attacking what they were trying to do.
They just generated all this junk, took home huge bonuses, and then when it collapsed, they said, oh, not us.
What they ginned up was pure extortion, putting a gun to the head of Congress.
Time and again, they heard the devastation that was happening in low and moderate income communities caused by bankers, by lenders, and they chose to ignore it.
I understood that the SEC was not merely a weakened version of what it was supposed to be. It was an agent of Wall Street.
When no one's enforcing the law, the criminals take over.
I'll continue to sit. I'm going to continue to stand with the people that are being oppressed.
The president labeled him a son of a bitch.
I don't think it's good to be a distraction to your team.
To stand proudly for the national anthem.
You know, some of these people need to move to another country.
Well, you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country.
The president is put in place to amplify the racists in this country.
Black men and boys are killed at an exponentially higher rate than white men and boys, as outlined by PBS. Black people are most likely to be killed by police, found mappingpoliceviolence.org. Personally, my biggest gripe is not saying how sports and politics have been attached at the hip. From the jockey syndrome, to the Negro Leagues, to Tommy Smith and John Carlos, Muhammad Ali, to modern day and everything in between. This is not an escape. It is a reflection of reality and a reflection of the times.
Dog on the White House lawn, would that
I'm Mike Shekels, and I'm the Director of Technical Operations, so if you're frantically tweeting at us that something's broken, thank you, because I'm fixing it. This here is Johnny Greenwald.
I'm Manager of Post-Production Technology. Simplest terms is I deliver the content.
And this is our master control room. We have many, many more destinations than ever before, and we created this room to consolidate it, to make sure that everything's going out is up to standard, so we meet all of our contractual agreements.
right, back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. Did M. Wembley become an American hero by hitting the join button below on YouTube and becoming a Young Turks member? Yes, flat out yes. I'm gonna read only one comment from Super Chat because it's a fun one. That's all. It is Trisha Briggs writing in. I want to rant so hard today, especially about our disgusting, corrupt government. Instead, I'm just going with yay, Anna's back.
Aw, thank you. It's really good to be back. I'll briefly talk about what happened during my vacation in the post game. So become a member if you're not one already. tyt.com/join.
You like M. Wembley.
All right.
Be a hero. All right, Anna.
All right. Well, we start off the second hour with some pretty devastating news. It's an update to what happened yesterday in those deadly shootings in Atlanta. A Latino man who escaped the Atlanta spa shooting says that he was handcuffed and detained for 4 hours after the incident while his wife, who was a victim, lay dead inside. It's just there's really no way to present this story in any other way to make it seem lighter than it is. It's just absolutely horrendous. The revelations come in an interview that he gave with a Spanish-speaking news website called Hispanico Mundo. And so Mario Gonzalez is the man here, and his wife, Delena Ashley Yon, who's 33 years old, had gotten a babysitter for their infant daughter and went to Young's Asian Massage to relax. They were in separate rooms inside when the gunman opened fire. Gonzalez said that he heard the gunshots and worried about his wife, but he was terrified. He was too scared to open the door. Deputies arrived within minutes, and Gonzalez, who survived the shooting that killed his wife, said police detained him in handcuffs for 4 hours after the attack. Gonzalez said that he was held in a patrol car outside the spa. Now, while he was being interviewed with his Hispanico Mundo, he said this: "They had me in the patrol car the whole time. They were investigating who was responsible, who exactly did this." And what's relevant about the timing is that while he was being detained for 4 hours, there was already a description, a clear description of the perpetrator. Gonzalez's accusation would mean that he remained detained after police released security video images of the suspected gunman, and after authorities captured him 150 miles south of Atlanta. So here's a man who's being detained. He's handcuffed in the back of a patrol car. He doesn't know at this point whether his wife made it. Doesn't know if his wife is alive, doesn't know what happened. And it wasn't until they were about ready to let him go that they informed him that his wife was murdered inside that facility. It's just absolutely disgusting. And clearly the reactions that we saw from some of the police officials after that tragic event happened kind of gives you a sense of some of the issues that there are within that police department, which we can talk about in more detail in just a minute. But Cenk, why don't you jump in?
Yeah, so they detain him at 5 o'clock. You want to arrest, not arrest, but detain some people in there to make sure that you got the right person or you don't let go the wrong person. There's some logic in that, as tragic as it is, as he's worried to death, of course, about his wife. But they had surveillance camera. They detain him at 5 o'clock. They get surveillance camera footage of the actual assailant at 6:30. And it doesn't match him at all. It's a young white guy. He's a middle-aged Latino guy. And then at 8 o'clock, they know exactly who it is, and they're now beginning to pursue the suspect. They still don't let him go, one of the victims, remember, until an hour later. So, look, easy to say better safe than sorry. But would they have detained? Look, one part will make it easy. Would they have detained a woman that long? Very likely the answer is no, right? Would they have detained a white guy that long? It's very hard to know, but given what we told you about last week about this department, unlikely, okay? But any way you slice it, that is awfully heartless. You know, in a situation like that, you've got to act quick. And by the way, there's a police department that apparently had a lot of empathy. They just reserved it for the guy who did the shooting. They said he had a really bad day. They didn't say he gave a confession. They said he came clean with his responsibility. I mean, every framing was in favor of the shooter. Meanwhile, there's a Mexican guy that they're holding. He's worried so much about whether his wife died. They won't tell him and they won't release him. And finally at the end, they release him and go, yeah, your wife is dead. Ugh.
You know, what's interesting is during the interview, he showed the reporters the scars on his hands from the handcuffs. And he was asked, like, do you think that your race has anything to do with it? And here's his statement. I don't know whether it's because of the law or because I'm Mexican. The simple truth is they treated me badly. Only when they finally confirmed I was her husband, did they tell me that she was dead. I wanted to know earlier. It's such an awful story all around. And the way that the police handled it, both in their statements following the shooting and in the way that they treated a man who was also victimized by this shooting, just gives you more examples of how authoritarian policing has become, how militant policing has become, how they seem to think it's totally fine to take incredibly cruel actions first and then maybe ask questions later. Oftentimes, no questions asked later either. And I can't imagine the unbearable pain in losing your partner like that. Imagine being stuck in the back of a patrol car for 4 hours, not knowing if your partner made it or not. I mean, it's awful all around. And they didn't seem to care. They didn't seem to care that there was already a description of a suspect, that a suspect was already in custody. They still waited until they treated this human being as a human being. Anyway, The story just keeps getting worse. Let's move on to some other news that's related to the Atlanta shooting. The shooting suspect in the Atlanta shootings attended a church that promoted uncompromising views on the role of government and also sex and gender identities, something that could have influenced his actions the day that he decided to open fire in 2 different facilities, killing 8 innocent individuals. So there were excerpts of sermons by the lead pastor of the Crabapple First Baptist Church in Milton. That's the name of the church, and the lead pastor is Jerry Dockery. Now these sermons have been deleted, and when I read you excerpts, you might have a good understanding as to why they've been deleted. On feminism and gender roles, Jerry Dockery said the following in one of his sermons: radical feminism has engulfed our culture like a tsunami. We're now striving for gender neutrality, for gender fluidity, you name it. It's just gender whatever you want. And I would say to you that this is a blatant, I will say it one more time, a blatant guidance, direction, and strategy of Satan to oppose and usurp the authority of God. And he also had some pretty strong views on sex and marriage, which I think is relevant to this conversation. He said in one of his sermons, "We believe that God has commanded that no intimate sexual activity be engaged in outside of a marriage between a man and a woman. We believe that any form of sexual immorality, such as adultery, fornication, homosexuality, bisexual conduct, bestiality, incest, polygamy, pedophilia, pornography. I mean, they love thinking about these things. Or any attempt to change one's sex or disagreement with one's biological sex is sinful and offensive to God." So this is all relevant because one of the things that the shooter allegedly said to the cops was that he felt this deep guilt because he had a sex addiction. And so I do think it's important to kind of focus on the type of culture some of these churches have, how it teaches self-loathing and hatred over natural urges that people have, over the identities that people relate to. And I know that there is like the hate angle to this as well as it pertains to the Asian community. But when it comes to hate in this country, I do think it's important to kind of pinpoint the various systems or institutions that help to perpetuate that hatred. And I think based on the kind of rhetoric that was used by this pastor, it could show some signs of how religion can play a role.
No, religion played a giant role, and no one will talk about it because they're scared to death of offending religious people. His pastor put poison into his head. Radical feminists are guided by Satan, he said. We just read you the quote. He repeated that it was blatant that Satan was doing it 3 different times. Funny enough, he seemed like a tough guy while he was doing that sermon. After the shooting, that's the sermon they take down. What happened? I thought you said it was blatant. Oh no, now you want to hide your real opinions. Your real opinions are fundamentalist and they drive terrorist activity like this. It's true in all the religions. Hate women and hate the others, hate gay people, and God told you to hate these people, and they're all directed by Satan. Oh, golly gee, did you attack the forces of Satan? I couldn't have seen that coming. No, you do see it coming. And now they put out all this PR marketing horse crap from the church going, oh no, he was not following the teachings of Jesus. Now, mind you, they taught him that Jesus hates all these people and that women shouldn't have rights. And then they said, well, I mean, technically we didn't tell him to murder women, so he's not following the teachings of Jesus. Okay, so look, whatever you think the teachings of Jesus is, the fundamentalist Christians that we have in this country that put this poison in people's heads, they barely follow Jesus at all. But I don't care if you think they do or they don't. The ideology that they put out there is toxic and oftentimes leads to violence, but even if it doesn't lead to violence, it leads to madness. So this guy in his head is like convinced, the shooter is, oh my God, I have a sex addiction. First of all, he probably didn't. He probably was a 21-year-old who liked sex, which is like almost every 21-year-old. But in religion, they teach you, oh, don't be human. Don't follow what your nature tells you. Instead, suppress it until you explode, right? So religion is crap when it comes to that. It is lies, total, utter lies. There is no sky god watching if you are masturbating to porn or not. But all of these idiots go around saying that to men and poison their minds. And then they turn into incels because they get so bitter and they're so frustrated. By the way, one of those fundamentalists who supports this ideology, and now this is Ben Shapiro, who is not Christian, but says the same exact things. That's why I tell you, it happens in Islam too. It happens across all the religions, right? Shapiro wrote a whole book called Porn Generation, How Social Liberalism is Corrupting Our Future, right? Don't watch porn. Oh, the women are trying to entice you. It's all the women's fault. It's not your fault, it's the women's fault, right? So I'm tired of that horse crap fundamentalist junk, okay? And so yes, it does lead to violence like this.
I got to jump in because finish it though, because I think the second part of that is relevant, right? So there's the first half, which is, oh, these horrible, loose women are going to try to lure you in with sex and they're going to try to get you to have premarital sex. The second half of it though is, if you indulge, you're a bad person, you're going to hell. And so there's an element that leads to self-loathing, like this extreme guilt, right? And look, there are many casual religious people in the country. And what I mean by that is they might identify as religious, but they're not going to church every weekend. They're not really, enveloped in like this church community. So that kind of messaging might just kind of like roll off their backs. But if the church is your community, right? That's your group, that's your tribe. They have that ideology. Then it increases the likelihood of self-loathing if you have engaged in the naughty behaviors that are obviously natural and human, right? And look, I can say that firsthand, not from religion. I actually, grew up going to Sunday school every Sunday, and knock on wood, I'm really happy that I wasn't taught all of the hateful stuff, right? But in terms of Armenian culture, Armenians are pretty conservative, and it was very well known that like if you're a young woman, if you're a woman who hasn't gotten married yet and you've lost your virginity, no one's gonna wanna marry you. You've been ruined, you've been tainted, you're awful. And when I was a teenager, I totally bought into that. And I remember having like extreme feelings of guilt, when I was a teenager, and teenagers are lusty. Like, what are you gonna do? Right? And I was like, I'm awful, no one's gonna wanna marry me, I'm terrible. But luckily I grew up and realized that it's all BS and everyone's having a good time. So don't hate on yourself.
Yeah, look, no, but guys, no, we're too soft on religion because everybody catches feelings. Oh my God, you can't say that about my fake God. So there are three components to religion. Let's just be honest about it, right? Number one, are there wonderful people who are religious? Of course there are. My hero right now is Reverend William Barber in North Carolina. He looks out for poor people. He's a wonderful moral guide in this world, okay? I've gone to countless mosques where they've given speeches on how you've got to help the needy, you've got to help the poor, and that's your number one directive from Allah, okay? So yes, there are great people, and I hope the majority of religious people are great people, right? Are there people who teach fundamentalism that is absolutely poison? Yes, lots and lots of them. But they say, because of the good religious people, you're not allowed to criticize the bad religious people. No deal, no deal. Fundamentalists suck. They're totally and utterly wrong, and they teach poison, and they sow hatred, fear, and ultimately a lot of times violence in all of the religions. Lastly, guys, for those of you who are good religious folks, who are probably the majority of you, I'm sorry, but the third thing I gotta tell you, it isn't true. It has to matter whether it's true. So we built this God that happens to look just like humans, that has fear and envy and greed and jealousy and all these things that are emotions born out of our evolution. Why would a higher consciousness have the emotions of a particular animal on a particular planet? That's insane. It's not even within billion miles of true. So why do I tell you it's not true, even though I'm breaking some of your hearts, right? It's because truth matters. This pastor and many, many, many other pastors talk about Satan, and they say Satan is real. The guy with the tail and the horns, and then gets out, dressed up in hot outfits on Halloween, right? It's total mythology. It's insanity, right? They convince people that Satan, and part of the reason I'm on a warpath on this, other than the fact that truth matters, is I've been talking to QAnon and right wingers on The Conversation. You should check out those interviews. You know the number one reason they believe in the insanity of QAnon? Because they say Satan is real. So obviously there's people who do blood sacrifices and child sacrifices and drink the blood of the children, because my pastor told me Satan is real and that's what Satan does. So I believe that a lot of people are doing that. So I want to go and they actually believe it. I know for rational people it seems impossible, but this guy that did the shootings, the Christian terrorist in Atlanta, and let's be honest, if he was a Muslim who said, I did it for my religion, we would call him a Muslim terrorist. This guy's definitely a Christian terrorist, okay? And I'm not afraid to say it because people are gonna cry about it. I'm afraid of the women who are getting slaughtered out there because no one has the courage to say, will you please stop teaching people to hate women to appease your non-existent sky god?
All right, Cenk has been very clear on that. We got to take a break, and when we come back, we have more news for you, including that story about Kylie Jenner and wealth inequality that I promised earlier in the show. Stick around.
back on Young Turks. Let me get these two out of the way before I get Maddie all over again. So Aspiration is a wonderful progressive institution. Put your money there. You know you're gonna have peace of mind. You're gonna get cash back, and you might win a lifetime TYT membership. So aspiration.com/TYT. Look, we got to set up a whole progressive economy. So let's stop giving our money to awful corporations who do awful things in the world. In terms of membership, if you're go to tyt.com/join, or you hit the join button, you get the $9.99 level, the premium level on YouTube. You get all of our shows, and that includes Old School. We're gonna record Old School tonight, Ben and I are. It's so much fun. So all these shows, I don't want you to miss out on them. And I think you'll love, if you like the Young Turks, you'll love Old School, and you'll love some of these programs that we have. So make sure that you're doing that. The join button's so easy, right underneath the video on YouTube. All right, let me go to your comments. This just came in on Super Chat. Michael Goldman says, got a text from the Nina Turner campaign. AOC just endorsed her. We need her and many more progressives in Congress to add to our numbers, pushing for priorities like Medicare for All, Green New Deal, and $15 minimum wage. Great. It's not that late. So great. I'm glad AOC's figured out who the progressive in that race is. Okay, but good news overall, okay? And so if you wanna help Nina, ninaturner.com/hello. But part of the reason I frame it that way is because I'm really mad about what happened to Gary Chambers, okay? You've seen Gary Chambers Jr. on a lot of our shows, and he'll be back on our shows. We helped him, we pushed him as much as we could. Almost no other progressive group or legislator came to help him. I think Cori Bush endorsed him, and that's about it, I think. I'll double check for you guys. He just missed the runoff by 1.6 points. They wrote him off. He can't win. 22.9 to 21.3. He could have won. But the cavalry never shows up for progressives. Everybody's worried about their own career. Everybody's worried about like, oh, what's our record gonna be? We didn't set up these groups to worry about their goddamn record. So you should have helped Gary, and he could have made it in to the runoff, and he could have won that congressional seat. Now it's gonna be two establishment people against each other. It's called courage, look into it. Oh no, you can't say that, we'll all be offended and never talk to you. Then don't talk to me. Try to grow courage instead. That'll be a much better expenditure of your time. So anyway, I love you guys, and you guys are wonderful to us. So I'll just read one here from Twitch. Kingsley says, 3 months of Bezos bucks put to good use, TYT forever. We're right there, brothers and sisters. TYT forever with you guys. All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk and Anna with you guys. I'm mad on a couple of fronts. As I just told the audience during the break, Gary Chambers Jr., a wonderful progressive running for Congress in Louisiana, just lost the runoff by 1.6 points. Almost no progressive group came to help him. Of course, Rebellion PAC gave him money, and I try to help, and Young Turks try to, and you guys try to help in every way. Cavalry didn't arrive. They abandoned him because they were so worried about their own careers and egos. We could have had a progressive in Congress. Nice job, guys. So, but I hope your precious careers are okay. Anyways, I'm in a mood. Anna, let's go and do the rest of the news.
All right. Yeah, that's right. Those are spring breakers in Miami. Looks like a lot of fun, doesn't it? Except it's not. Spring breakers have led to a pretty strict time code, or I should say curfew. I don't know what a time code is. I'm ridiculous. But basically, so many spring breakers have flooded into Miami, causing chaos in the streets that authorities there have decided to implement a pretty strict curfew beginning at 8 p.m. And in fact, just recently they decided to extend that curfew as a result of some of that chaos. So Miami Beach officials have extended the emergency curfew for 3 weeks after more than 1,000 party revelers were arrested for flouting COVID-19 safety protocols during the spring break. Authorities say massive crowds on the beaches have brought chaos and disorder to the city. Now, one of the reasons why spring breakers have decided to go to a state like Florida is because Florida has been incredibly laxed in regard to coronavirus shutdowns. There is no mask mandate. If you come to a place like California or some of the other states that still have policies like that implemented, you might not have as much fun during spring break. So you have all these spring breakers coming, and they're being met with some pretty significant police force because as much as I want them to have a good time, unfortunately, things did get pretty out of control. So authorities are telling the spring breakers, you need to be off the streets by 8 p.m., but it's not working. Huge crowds of party goers continue to fill the streets after curfew. And the new rules that have been placed by the mayor are being ignored. So let's go to the video that gives you more detail into that. So I wanted to show you that video just to kind of provide some evidence regarding what the police say that they're concerned about. Things are getting pretty chaotic, and unfortunately the spring breakers have been met with military style vehicles that are patrolling the streets. Now the spring breakers aren't having it. A few of them did speak to reporters, and let's hear what they have to say.
Take a look, the crowd is amazing. We're having a blast. We can't go to South Beach, then why can't we go? No, that's not fair, we're on spring break.
Are you here for spring break?
Yes.
What has it been like so far? And are you not scared in the pandemic to be out here with the folks?
I know, it's been swinging. There's so many females out here. I love it. I got my mans though, so be good.
You infect someone's grandma or something.
I doubt it. I highly doubt it. How great it should be out here anyway. There's so many people.
So Cenk, I know that you guys talked about this a little bit on the show last week, but I wanted to kind of share my thoughts about how I don't think anyone should really be surprised, right? If you have a state that's traditionally a spring break type of state to go to, essentially messaging to the world that they don't take COVID seriously, they're not gonna have a mask mandate, they're not gonna shut things down, they're not gonna have curfews, you don't have to eat outside at restaurants, you can go inside. Yeah, these are young people who have been cooped up inside during this pandemic. And that kind of messaging is going to attract giant crowds of people who are looking to have a good time. I'm not excusing anyone for any bad behavior, but let's keep it real. Like, people want to have a good time, and younger people, like, they think that they're invincible, right? Because COVID is known to be far more lethal to elderly people, to people who have pre-existing conditions. And a lot of young people think if they get COVID, they might get a little sick, but they'll survive it, it's not a big deal. And so I think that the messaging from officials in Florida, throughout this entire pandemic has only encouraged students to travel to Florida for spring break in order to have a good time. I don't know why they're shocked by this.
Yeah, well, I have two thoughts on this. As we talked about last week, this story's a little complicated because on the one hand, you see the video, they're dancing on that car and stuff. That's somebody's car. I lived in Miami Beach, and I'm positive that the residents there are freaking out because those are massive crowds. Miami Beach is normally crowded, but damn, those are gigantic. And you're in the middle of a pandemic, obviously. But the spring break has become more and more black in South Beach, and some folks in Miami don't like that, and that dates back to 20 years from when I left. That had begun, and grumblings had begun. So there's a little racial undertone here too. So be careful about the story. All right, now the second part of it is, look, the dam's gonna burst. That's why I know some of you got mad at me last week when I started talking about how after I get the vaccines, no, we gotta go back to normal and we gotta at some point not wear masks anymore. And so you do whatever you're comfortable with and always dictated by your doctor and your interpretation of medicine and science, not mine, right? But we've got, after I get vaccinated, I'm not gonna go with masks anymore because the science says you're fine and that you're not going, at this point, it looks like you're not going to spread it. By the way, I will change my mind instantly if there are studies out that say you could still spread it, okay? So that's a giant asterisk there. But the reason I'm telling you that in the middle of this story is because, guys, whether I do it or not, and I'm generally a cautious person, as you've seen over the last year in us describing this, at some point, people are gonna go, no more. I'm not listening to the government. I'm not listening to anybody. We got vaccinated. We've been cooped up indoors for a year and more now. And especially the young, of course they're gonna do a massive tsunami of spring break. So that's why I'm saying that the government has to follow the science and not be overly cautious after the vaccinations, because that creates other problems like this one.
Yeah, exactly. I'm also thinking about what things are gonna be like once everything is open. When there's, when most people are vaccinated, when there are no more restrictions. People have speculated that it's gonna be like the Roaring 20s, and I think that's true. Like part of the reason why I'm placing more of the emphasis on officials in Miami is because they should have been prepared. It seems like they weren't prepared for the large crowds that showed up, right? Because it's not like spring break prior to the pandemic was a small thing in Miami. It's always been a big thing. And so why weren't they prepared for the crowds? And why weren't they expecting the crowds, knowing that their state had been touting their anti-coronavirus restrictions policies almost from the very beginning? I mean, they should have expected this.
Yeah, but Anna, it's even slightly worse than that. They spent $5 million advertising Miami as a spring break destination. It's the most they've spent in the last 20 years. Well, you can't tell everybody to come and then get mad at them for coming. So I think that everyone involved in this debacle in Miami and Florida is culpable here. And so I'm not too concerned about them crying me a river. But yeah, the residents have to be protected. And at some point, everybody else on the planet needs an outlet. So let's get vaccinated as quickly as possible. Let's confirm the science that we're going to be okay after the vaccinations. And then let's let everybody be human.
So let's take a break. And when we come back, one person who's asking, for everyone to treat her like a human is Kylie Jenner. And I don't know, jury's out on that. Is she being cruel in asking for donations for her makeup artist who just suffered a pretty tragic accident? We'll give you the details on that controversy and more when we come back.
Back on the Young Turks, let me read a member comments. National Buffoons Cancun Vacation writes in. That's their handle on our website. It's called purity culture. I grew up in it. I have friends who grew up in it, and it is incredibly harmful and not talked about enough when we discuss modern evangelicism. There are entire books written about the subject. It's 100% right. This whole idea that no, you have to be pure, no porn, no self-love, no hooking up, no nothing. Bottle up every human impulse you have. No, it's stupid. Why did God create you that way if he didn't want you to be that way? It's just the dumbest thing I have ever heard in my life. And honestly, pretty much every fundamentalist believes it all across the world. And that's probably about 1 billion people. And unfortunately, a lot of non-fundamentalists believe that crap too. It's not true, okay? It's not just that the God doesn't exist. If God existed, why did he build you this way and then say, don't use it? That's just, you can't, you can talk in circles for forever and it'll never make sense. Someone who likes Bernie Sanders wrote in, conservative Christians, God gave you a biological sex. You must conform to the corresponding gender. Also conservative Christians, God gave you a biological urge to have sex. You must resist it. Yeah, what happened to, well, God made you a man or a woman, so God wins, right? God made you horny. Does God win on that? No, don't follow God. No. Guys, I'm gonna get too graphic and you guys are gonna be freaked out, but guys have wet dreams because they must expel it, okay? And then you're going to tell me that God did not intend for you to expel it. It's insanity. It's insanity. All of it is insanity. Okay, but I care because it leads to self-hatred and it leads to hatred of women, etc. All right. More American Heroes, Raymond Donnelly and Mark Dunn just joined in the join button below on YouTube. Thank you guys. System is a handle on YouTube, and thank you. You're the one who tipped me off to Gary Chambers losing in the middle of the show. I'm so mad I can't see straight over that. Sun Dragon made a good point on Super Chat. God made seahorses, and they can change sex. Where do seahorses go? They go to seahorse heaven or hell? Is there seahorse purgatory? Okay, what does God intend? Oh God. Please, I'm begging you. Okay. Anyway, Ethan Gruel writes in, under bed rest because of a scary abscess on my tailbone near my spine. I really appreciate having TYT here to keep me both engaged, empowered, entertained, and slightly enraged in a good way, LOL. Only we can make people enraged in an LOL way. Daisy Dragon, thanks for the 1,000 bits on Twitch. Love you guys, we'll be right back. Back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you. We got more interesting stories because that's what we do for a living. Casper, go.
All right. Kylie Jenner's makeup artist was in a tragic car accident recently, and as a result, he suffered some head injuries and needed to have emergency surgery. Now, we live in America where if you don't have the right kind of insurance that costs you a lot of money per month, you're gonna have to pay a lot out of pocket. And there was a crowdfunding page set up in order to raise $60,000 for this emergency surgery. Now, most people learned about this tragic accident after Kylie Jenner posted about it in an Instagram story. I want to share a quick screenshot of that where she says, "May God watch over you and protect you, Makeup by Samuel. Everyone take a moment to say a prayer for Sam, who got into an accident this past weekend, and swipe up to visit his family's GoFundMe." Okay, now Kylie Jenner is actually getting a lot of backlash for that post because Kylie Jenner is notoriously wealthy. In fact, back in, I believe 2017, Forbes ran a feature about how she's a self-made billionaire. Turns out that she's actually not self-made, which wasn't surprising, but also is unlikely to actually be a billionaire. But she is very, very wealthy. In fact, so wealthy that her fans were livid that she was asking for these donations when $60,000 $5,000 is really nothing for Kylie Jenner. She could easily just snap her fingers, pay that amount, help out her friend and makeup artist, and we're good to go. But that's not what happened. She donated $5,000, and that did lead to quite a bit of backlash. I'm gonna give you examples of what people are saying and how Kylie Jenner responded in just a minute. But I do think it's important to note that Kylie Jenner spends a lot of money on a lot of dumb things. And if she's concerned about her friend and this makeup artist, then she should have just helped him out. But let's take a look at this video so you kind of get a better understanding of why people are upset.
Her huge social media following also brings in a hefty income for Kylie through sponsored posts. The estimated value of a single post is $1 million. She's posted ads for Quay sunglasses, Teamy Blends Detox Tea, Sugar Bear Hair Vitamins, and more. Kylie's social media is also where we can see how she spends her millions. In 2016, she purchased a 1.4-acre Hidden Hills compound, which includes a 1,300 square foot mansion for $12 million. Over the last 2 years, Kylie has bought at least 5 other properties totaling more than $40 million. With all those properties, she definitely has the space to store all of her luxury cars. Since receiving a $225,000 black Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon for her 16th birthday, Kylie has amassed a pretty impressive luxury car collection.
I mean, guilty. Like, let's just wrap it up. No, let's not wrap it up. That's actually not what I think. Let me give you more details. Now, Samuel Rada is the name. No, it's guilty. More complicated than that. Oh, no, it's not. But here's the thing, Cenk. It's not up to individuals to pay for the medical expenses for workers. The government should do it. It's a broken system. At the end of the day, it's a broken system. First of all, the system is broken when this person who's really done nothing in her life other than make crappy lip gloss is able to rake in hundreds of millions of dollars and buy not 1, not 2, but 5 properties in a state that has a serious housing crisis. The system is broken. So I'm not saying that she's completely not guilty. She is a symptom. She is the product of a broken system. Now, people are angry at her because she only donated $5,000, right? When she could have easily just paid for the medical expenses. And she has the means, why not do it? If you genuinely care about it, why not do it? But I don't believe in mutual aid. I don't. Mutual aid is great, but I don't want to live in a society where we rely on mutual aid. I want to live in a society where people's basic needs, their human rights are met, and healthcare falls under that category. This guy's a makeup artist, right? And based on what I've read about him, and I wanted to learn more about his career, right? Because if you're not a unionized makeup artist or hairstylist, you don't have health insurance. If you're just a freelance makeup artist, you might get hired by rich people like Kylie Jenner. In fact, this 26-year-old makeup artist has been hired by Chrissy Teigen, Khloe Kardashian, other wealthy people who can clearly step in and provide aid in this moment, this tragic moment in his life. But again, when you rely on the whims of wealthy people, well, that's not the kind of system where people are gonna have their needs met. That's the point that I'm trying to make. So is Kylie Jenner bad? Yeah, sure, I guess she's bad. But again, she is a symptom of a broken system. And I think that we need to actually do something about that system rather than focus all our energy on talking about how awful Kylie Jenner is, which she's pretty awful.
Okay, look, we actually have a fun poll on this in a second that compares her to her other awful sister. But first, I want to double down on the 2 things Anna's saying. First of all, you don't get to brag about being a billionaire and then ask people for money to help your friend and not chip in that much. That's it's so Trumpian. Oh, I'm the richest. Look at all my cars. Look at all my houses. And I'm gonna lie to Forbes and I'm gonna say I'm a billionaire when I have whatever it is, 600 million, 800 million. What difference does it make, right? The press report says that she makes $450,000 a day. Okay, so no, you don't get to ask us for money. No, guilty. Okay, so now, but overall, Anna's point is the most important one, which is, God damn it, let's do Medicare for all. What are we doing? Anderson Cooper asks every time a progressives suggest Medicare for all, how are you gonna pay for that? With goddamn Kylie's money. That's how we're gonna pay for it, okay? Apparently the rich don't know what to do with their money. How many Mercedes does she need? How many mansions does she need? Look, guys, it's not to be punitive, okay? It's because I'm just saying something that is literal. Obviously, there's a lot of room to tax the wealthy, tons and tons and tons of room to tax them, right? But we will not tax them. It's driving unbelievable income inequality. 40% of the country is bankrupted by a $400 problem. 40% of the country, that's over 100 million people. Meanwhile, Kylie's like, oh, should I take this Mercedes or that Mercedes? Haha, that's so funny. Let's make my fans pay for my friends' medical expenses. No, it's not. No, it's outrageous. So the reality is every other developed civilized country in the world has universal health care. We're the only ones who don't. Why? It is on behalf of the Kylie Jenners and the Donald Trumps. They want to protect all of their money in their infinite greed and refuse to do a system that is just, and by the way, costs half as much because of their insatiable greed. And so as we go into the poll, look, with the Kardashians and the Jenners, they should, I was almost gonna do a petition instead of a poll, a petition to rename them, their last name, to late stage capitalism, because that's what they are.
You know, it's interesting though, because one other takeaway from this story is just how much the culture has changed. Because the early years of Keeping Up with the Kardashians, flaunting that kind of wealth was something that brought in pretty significant ratings, right? And it was because I think at that point, most Americans were still delusional enough to think like, no, this is the land of opportunity. I'm watching what my future can be. I can be wealthy and successful like that too. But I think with what most Americans are experiencing right now, especially during the pandemic, when the government failed to fulfill its one and only role of protecting the American people, it's just become abundantly clear that this system is broken. And for those who continue to flaunt their wealth like the Kardashians do, they seem to be pretty puzzled at the negative reaction they've been getting. And this isn't the first time. I don't remember if it was Kim Kardashian's birthday. One of them was celebrating a birthday and they decided to like rent an entire island during the pandemic because they wanted to party and have a good time, even when things were shut down, even as hundreds of thousands of people were dying from this virus. And they were shocked at the backlash they got from that. Yeah, you're getting backlash because it is tone deaf. And it's so disconnected from the experience, the lived experiences of pretty much every other American in this country right now. I do want to just quickly give you one quick example of a tweet that was out there. Complex Sneakers put out something saying Stormy, that's Kylie Jenner's child, got her own pair of dad's PlayStation Dunks. This made me realize how old I am because I don't know what that is, and that does not sound fascinating, but it does seem very expensive. And one person responded with, her outfit is worth more than my life. And I think that's what people see whenever the Kardashians and the Jenners flaunt their wealth like this. Now, in response to the criticism, Kylie Jenner says this: I saw my current makeup artist and friend Ariel post about Sam's accident and his family's GoFundMe. It compelled me to visit his GoFundMe, which was set at $10,000, Jenner wrote. Now remember, the stories that I read said that it was set at $60,000. So there's a conflict there.
No,
she also
lying.
says,
let me be clear.
Yeah.
She's definitely lying. If the goal was 10,000 and they were at 5,000 and you put in 6, then why would you need to fundraise anymore? You would have met the goal. Then why did you send out a message about fundraising? You're obviously lying. Let's move on with our lives.
So she says that it was originally set at $10,000. I think that you're right that she was misleading people. She says they had already raised $6,000, so I put in $5K to reach their goal, right? So she's trying to make herself out to be the good guy here. She's like, I don't know how all of this got so twisted, but his family has reached out through Ariel and are very appreciative. So she's like basically saying, get off me. I'm just trying to be the good guy here, and I didn't do anything wrong. So look, again, I think that I get why people are irritated with how she handled it, but Kylie Jenner is not the root of the problem, right? Getting angry at Kylie Jenner is, and believe me, 5 houses, yeah, I'm pretty angry at Kylie Jenner. But Kylie Jenner, again, is the symptom of this broken system. She is a pretty face on the issue of inequality in America, a situation in which you can have so much wealth, but one of your workers, right, freelance worker, but still a worker who dolls you up so you can take your cheesy Instagram pictures, can't even afford medical bills. Why is it that Kylie Jenner gets to rake in hundreds of millions of dollars, but the people who make Kylie Jenner who Kylie Jenner is, all of the glitz and glam, they struggle? And that's not something that's isolated in this particular story. That is represented in every single job, every single profession in this country because the system is broken.
Okay, we did a fun poll here. Remember when her sister, I guess Kendall's her name. I don't follow these trash shows where people rub how rich they are in our faces. And she said she did the ad for Pepsi, where she cured Black Lives Matter and all other ailments with Pepsi. So which one is more trash? I mean, guilty. Kylie for her tone deaf GoFundMe post. Well, there's a Go Something Me post she should have done instead. Anyway, Kendall for her BLM Pepsi ad. It's a good
Can we
question.
actually just quickly go to that ad? Just real quick, it's a snippet of it, just to remind everyone of how ridiculous it was. I can't believe Pepsi thought that was a good idea. Like, just give a cop a Pepsi and everything's okay.
No, but look, that ad, I know that we're trying to do the right thing. And I know that Kylie was trying to do the right thing and at least donating and making people aware of this person's pain. So I'll temper it with a little bit of that. But guys, that shows that everybody at Pepsi, I mean, there had to be hundreds and hundreds of people involved in making that ad. They all are apparently soaked in white privilege and wealth privilege. Because they're like, oh yeah, protests are fun parties. No, people get their ass kicked at protests. They get shot in the eye with rubber bullets from cops. They get tear gassed by cops. They're not parties. And the cops aren't going to be persuaded by a Pepsi. And so it's so performative. It makes it look like, oh, we're on your side, minorities. Oh, look at all the different minorities we featured on this ad. Are we actually gonna do anything about it? No, we're gonna keep the same exact oppressive system, but meanwhile, you should drink a Pepsi while you're doing it. So it's just there, but the point that Anna made, I'm gonna double down on as well. The Medicare for all, we're very clear about that. But the second thing is, they're a symptom of the disease, and the society is changing on them, and that's why they're confounded. They're like, what? We used to make fun of all you poor people and middle class people all the time, and we would rub it in your face, and you would love that kind of masochism, and you would pay us billions of dollars for that. Now we don't get to rub it in your face anymore. God, the rules have changed. We don't like this. And the person in that family that drives all of this is their mom. Their mom is one of the worst forms of capitalist greed I have ever seen in my life. I'm not at all surprised that family gets along with Donald Trump really, really well. All right, we got a lot more in the post game where we're actually going to have fun. Hit the join button below or go to tyt.com/join. All right, members, you're gonna love it. We'll see you there. Thanks for watching. We'll be back in a minute for you.
So a lot of progressive office holders are doing something fun. I like fun. They're doing the last 2 years in 2 minutes. Okay, we're gonna try it here. First, I wanna let you guys know about the years before that. Hey, remember we started the Just Democrats here on the Young Turks. It was officially launched on our air, basically by you guys. And then we featured AOC, we featured Cori Bush, and Ro Khanna became the first ever Just Democrat incumbent, all on the Young Turks. Now, the last 2 years have been a spectacular follow-up to that. So let's put the 2 minutes on the clock and do this. Young Turks got to start back in 2002, and I think we've been an important part of the progressive movement ever since. What we mainly do is amplify the progressive voice and candidates out there, and I think we've done a pretty good job. Right now, we're currently #1 most engaged news politics network online, beating CNN, Fox News, and MSNBC, all of them. We're #1 in total minutes watched. That means not only the number of people watching, but how long they watch. We just crossed 20 million followers and 500 million monthly views. Now, why? That's because actually the country's progressive. It's 2/3 progressive. And you guys have allowed us to be your voice, and we're incredibly thankful for that. So what did we do with that voice? Well, let's look at 2019. We went all over the country talking to you guys and the candidates. So we were in Miami, we were in Detroit, we were in Houston, and we were in Iowa. In fact, we were all over Iowa. You guys were all over Iowa, and all of the candidates saw you guys. We had wonderful people speaking, like the one and only Nina Turner at our rallies. Bernie Sanders stopped by, Andrew Yang, Elizabeth Warren. We interviewed almost everyone on the campaign trail, with the exception of Biden and Buttigieg. And we held them accountable. We even did a progressive economic pledge, and so many wonderful people signed on to that. Bernie Sanders, Warren, Marianne Williamson, AOC, the entire squad, Justice Democrats, and so many others. Now, on top of all that, we started a show called The Conversation, where we featured so many progressive thinkers, writers, and candidates. And one of the candidates we featured in 2019 was Jamal Bowman. Here comes Jamal Bowman. Then we had an amazing 2020. We hired a climate reporter. Damage Report passed 500,000 subscribers. Young Turks passed 5 million subscribers. We're getting the message out to more and more people. Bernie Sanders comes on in the heat of the primary. He comes on after the election to say what we're gonna do for the future. And then Marie Newman wins. Jamal Bowman wins. Cori Bush wins. And then just when you thought it couldn't get any better, here comes Nina Turner. Hello, somebody. And she's running for Congress, and she comes on the Young Turks first. On election week, we had nearly 2 million hours of viewing. We're #1 destination for progressives. You made all that happen. This is amazing, and thank you for those 2 years. What, I went past 2 minutes? Of course!
Viewers had asked for an interview with the TYT Lizard. Mr. Lizard. Oh, you changed colors today. Nice. I don't even know how you feel about us. Do you even like us?
Well, you guys made me this awesome house, so I'm kind of in your debt. I was found outside on the street, and you gave me a home. Granted, it was a really crappy home for a while, but then through the power of fundraising, I became a person who has a multi-level Trump-style mansion.
You do. By the way, you've never looked better, man. Normally, you're just green or just brown, but today you're in mid-lizard, right?
I'm not very smart. I'm a lizard, so I don't know how the science works. I guess this is just my mood. It's not every day that thresholds like this are broken. I'm just so excited. I can't contain my pigmentation.
And now you're showing it off.
Yep.
Yeah, I've never seen the lizard like this before.
back on TYT, Cenk and Anna with you guys. I want to read one comment from Super Chat because it was on point to what we were talking about, and I share it. This idea. So no more pot for you wrote in. I just wanted to say, ever since I've been openly atheist, I've been really happy. Love you guys, and then put in BLM and feminist. No, guys, look, even for those of you who are religious and get upset at me when we have these discussions, I'm telling you, not every atheist by a long shot, and there's some bad guy radical atheists now that I don't know what the hell they're thinking. But almost all the atheists I know are way happier. You know why? You get rid of this oppressive judger in your head. And I know because I used to be religious. You think there's this guy inside your head judging you 24/7. And when you get rid of that guy that never existed in the first place, you feel liberated. And it feels fantastic. So, and you don't then become some weirdo who goes and like does harm to people. Look at us, we're trying to help the world in every way we can. What's that?
Yeah. No, or to yourself. But it goes beyond religion, right? It goes beyond what your religious identity is. There's nothing more liberating than knowing who you are and feeling confidence in that and being unapologetic about it, right? Like every once in a while, I'll get a question from people who are like, wow, like people are pretty vicious online. Like, how do you get through it? My life's good, right? And I know I'm a good person. So whenever people online say whatever it is they have to say, whenever religious people are passing judgment on me, whenever people in my own community are passing judgment on me based on my own views, political views or lifestyle views, whatever it is, as long as you feel confident in who you are, it doesn't matter. Like, because the thing that I try to remind myself is life is super, super short. So are you gonna live your life in a way that appeases others? Or are you gonna live your life in a way that increases your own satisfaction and happiness? I'm gonna go with my own satisfaction and happiness. I think that's way more important. Make decisions that are good for your life, not decisions that are good for a preacher's life or a preacher's perspective on your life. Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, one of the things that continues happening is, like, right now, it's just hilarious. Bunch of like Twitter dorks like debating about whether or not you or I like are progressive enough or leftist enough. I don't really give a shit, bro. Like, at the end of the day, you're on Twitter debating about whether someone's left enough. Like, what are you doing for the left other than, pleasuring yourself to this ridiculous debate on Twitter? Like, it doesn't matter. I know what my political views are. I know what kind of person I am. I know what kind of person you are, Cenk. Let me say one thing, and I know, Brett, we'll get off it in a second. I want you guys to be clear about one thing. And if there's one thing that you need to know about Cenk that is 100% true, and it is not true of anyone else I've worked for, no one else I've worked for. Cenk is the only person in the media who will not censor me. He's the only one, only one. He's the only one who doesn't try to police my views. He doesn't try to police what I have to say. This is the only place I've worked where I can openly share my ideas without any judgment, without any retaliation. And that matters to me way more than whether or not randos on Twitter think that TYT is leftist enough. Just saying.
And I appreciate you saying that. That's very nice of you. But I'll end on this, and then we got plenty of stuff to do here too. Look, guys, if it's called tradition and heritage and these things that make it sound positive, but what is it really? It's just old rules. And how would the person who made those old rules, however many hundreds of years ago, know your life better than you do? That's literally impossible. They had no idea what was going to come. They didn't know that there was going to be cars, let alone the internet, let alone your specific circumstances. The old rules that they teach you by definition cannot be true. You have to use your own judgment to make decisions that are right for you. So don't listen to any, it's usually old men, telling you how you have to abide by old rules and rules that were set up basically on his behalf, okay? And for his good and not for your good. use your own judgment and be brave and courageous in doing that. As long as you follow the simplest rule in the world, don't hurt other people, right? Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Because it's not actually in the Bible, but it's called the golden rule for a reason, because it makes sense. Outside of that, don't listen to any stupid old rules set hundreds, if not thousands of years ago by people that didn't know you. All right. Anna.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the awkward interview that Trump recently had. So Fox News's Harris Faulkner had a big telephone interview with Donald Trump, and it didn't go so well. Lots of awkward moments, including the moment where Faulkner broke some news and then immediately had to backtrack or retract, I should say, because she made a mistake regarding the DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. Let's watch.
Because it's just happened now, and I want to double check this with our producers. The DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas has resigned, Mr. President.
Well, I'm not surprised. Good. That's a big victory for our country.
Hold on. Let me stop. Let me listen to my team one more time. Forgive me. That has not happened. But and I apologize. Okay. Listening to the team and you.
Cross off
but
that victory.
I know that.
Look, I don't know what happened, and sometimes news breaks when you're live, and you get this temptation to just do it live, right? Just take a break. It's all right. Take a break, take a breather, okay? Before you embarrass yourself by saying that a top official in the administration has resigned. Just make sure you confirm that, Look, mistakes are made, but just like this urge to be like, we gotta do it, make sure it's on there, we gotta do it, we gotta be first. Just relax, it's gonna be okay. No one goes to Fox News for breaking news.
Look, Anna, it's a little worse than that. And it's so embarrassing that I almost feel bad for Harris Faulkner, but you gotta have the context of news in your head if you're an anchor on television. Like, what are the chances that the Department of Homeland Security head resigned in the middle of the Trump interview because Trump criticized them in the morning? Remember, it's the Biden administration. That is incredibly unlikely. I mean, overwhelmingly unlikely. So that's the type of thing, if you thought you heard your producer say it, or even if your producer did say the DHS secretary has resigned, I would never say that on air when I'm interviewing a former president, because I'd think that's not likely to be true, right?
It gets worse. Yeah, it gets worse, Cenk. It gets so much worse. So she tries to save it, and Trump's reaction is important here. So let's take a look.
Well, and I want to tell everybody, you issued a statement last night, and you called for that, though. And you're just talking about him, just to clarify, and as somebody who you feel is not competent to handle what's going on. So let me clean up on aisle 7 with my error. He has not resigned, and let me move right to what you are calling for, and others too. Most presidents, ex-presidents like yourself, do not weigh in at this level. Why did you feel like you needed to on this issue?
Well, you called me, I didn't call you, in all fairness.
I don't really have anything to say. That was awesome.
Yeah. No, look, Trump's such a mess too. It's so sad that 40% of the country looks at Trump and thinks that's my leader. That's the guy I look up to. Anyway, so the reason why they had this mess is not just because of Harris Faulkner's mistake. Trump puts out the statement because he's not on Twitter anymore. So he's just like throwing leaflets at a corner, right? He had Sean Spicer tweet this out on his behalf, photocopied and pasted. He's sending faxes to people, telegrams like, I hear ya. Listen here, President Trump's got a telegram for you. Yeah, that's it. And so the statement was, I don't like this guy because he criticized me and I want him to resign. Everybody's like, yeah, okay, that's not gonna happen. So when I'm sure every Fox show was trying to get Trump on 24/7. So he happened to pick up when Faulkner's show was on. He's like, yeah, all right, sure, I'll go on air. And then Faulkner's like, okay, so you put out this statement, and normally ex-presidents aren't such jerks. It's what she meant to say, but she had to couch it in so aggressive and how they disagree with the former administration, etc. And he's like, I didn't call you, you called me. I don't care. Oh my, they're both a mess.
I love it. But I'm not gonna lie, that smackdown by Trump was pretty entertaining. And that's the thing, like Trump is a complicated figure. Like he's not complicated when he's in a position of power. He's awful and should never be in a position of power. He's cruel, he's selfish, he's narcissistic, he's incredibly incompetent. So I'm not trying to make him out to be good in any way. But there's a reason why he succeeded in The Apprentice. Like he's, dare I say it, time to time, kind of funny. And that moment was certainly funny. And Cenk, since you mentioned his leaflets, I did want to read what he had to say about Mayorkas. We had these graphics ready for the first story, but it's super relevant for this story. Trump slammed Mayorkas as pathetic, clueless, self-satisfied, and incapable of leading the Department of Homeland Security in his statement, adding that Mayorkas' Sunday show appearances were a national disgrace. Trump called for an immediate congressional investigation into what he called a gag order on our nation's heroic border agents and ICE officers. I mean, Trump is the guy who tried to have like administration officials sign NDAs, right?
Yeah, like, of course, he had nonstop gag orders. And every time there was a leak, he was like, that's it, they should be executed. We should have full extent of the law. I think it's treason to do a leak like this. Now he's like, can you believe that they are doing these kind of orders where the government officials aren't allowed to talk to the press? Really, really, after all that? Look, but all of this, they're never gonna stop. So every Republican story we do and every Trump story we could end with, really? So look, on the other issue, whenever Obama spoke out against Trump, Fox News, et cetera, would pretend to be outraged. Can you believe a former president is bad-mouthing a current president? That is against protocol and etiquette. And we, as Trump supporters, care a lot about etiquette. Now, Trump, I mean, I don't want to vomits on top of Biden's administration. Mayorkas national disgrace. I'm calling him for him to be blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe we should hang him like we wanted to hang Mike Pence. And Fox is like, bravo, bravo, no. And at the end, Faulkner had to apologize. He was like, no, it's true, it's true. We called you didn't call us. We're so sorry, of course, right? Pathetic.
All right, let's move on to some other stuff. So the next thing we're gonna do is watch videos that we've never seen and react to them. So Vanishing Dragon, I'm assuming from our Twitch audience, has put together these videos that make her smile, okay? They're videos from the Makes Me Smile channel on Discord. I haven't seen them yet, Cenk hasn't seen them yet. I have no idea what they are or what they're about. So we're just gonna watch for the first time and react.
Wow, I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't. I feel good. I knew that I wouldn't. So good, so good. I got you. Wow.
I knew that this was eventually gonna affect us. I knew it, and I was hoping that it wouldn't. Now that was funny because it wasn't us specifically. That looked like a mix of Ben Mankiewicz and Sam Seder. I don't know if that was intentional, but like, yeah, that didn't look like 100% Ben.
Okay, first of all, that video scrambled my mind. So I don't know what this is. I know that I'm slightly perturbed by it. I want to have fun with it. I enjoy the hearts, I enjoy the music, but what happened to Ben's face is freaking me out so much that I'm getting like slightly nauseous over it. So is that a combination of someone else and Ben? Is it supposed to be Ben?
It's just supposed to be Ben, but like I guess there's a glitch in the system that makes him look like a hybrid between himself and Sam Seder.
Okay, all right. Then I got worried it was me and Ben, and I didn't know what happened. But okay, all right.
Oh, I can make predictions. We're coming up. I know it. You know it. I know it. The American people know it. So let's do it. Let's see what's next.
Oh, you touch my tra-la-la. My ding ding dong. You touch my tra-la-la.
I think there's some chance that actually is Brett.
I know. I mean, you don't need to do this with Brett. I'm sure like Brett will either eventually do something similar or already has. Like, I think Brett has that hat. Brett, do you have that hat? He does. He just nodded his head yes. Of course.
And have you ever sang that song?
You touch my tra-la-la. Oh, my ding-ding-dong.
I knew it.
I can't.
It's such a gross song. Jesus.
It's a baseball hat. It just looks like a beret when they like deep fake it or whatever.
So is it? It looks like it's a guy who's doing all this and then like deep faking our faces on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. And look at the boomer just solved it like 28 minutes in. Okay, you got the next one?
Let's do it. Right now, but Silicon Valley, it's the enemy. Like, why do we need this? We don't need this. We don't need this technology. Like, this is awful. Really, when you think about it, it's awful. I mean, luckily, it's glitchy enough that I think people can see that it's a fake, right? But they're improving it more and more. And I've seen deep fakes that don't look fake. Like, why do we need that? Why do we need that? Why do we need? We don't need that. We don't.
Yeah. Well, Anna, you can't stop technology. Everybody knows that. And it could be used for evil, but it could also be used for good. And this is as close to good as it gets. First of all, I thought Fran looked good there, singing that song. Okay, way to go, Francesca. I love that song. I have it on my iTunes. And you know why? Because it is a song of resistance and liberation. And I'm here for liberation. I'm so lucky. Apparently not everybody's born with this, but I have, apparently no conservatives are born with it, but I have the ability to empathize with others. I don't find it that difficult. So as I hear that song, I love her for standing up and fighting back. So that's
Cenk. Okay, let's go. Let's move on.
Okay. All right.
How you turn that? I love how you turn that into like a heartfelt schmoopy thing. But I hear you. Yes, it's a wonderful song. Welcome to the 1970s. When did that song come out?
70s, 80s in that ballpark. Yeah. All right. What's next? Okay. I have a bad feeling about what's coming up next. Yeah,
that's the creepiest one.
That was my favorite. I loved it because I'd love to see John making those facial expressions. But the problem is, Anna, these deepfakes are pretty good, man. Like if you don't know John Iadarola really, really well, you might think that's him. And we know John really well, and that ain't him.
Exactly. That's why it makes this one, at least so far, the creepiest, because I know John, and John doesn't make creepy, lusty faces like that ever. And he also doesn't like music or singing. And it's just like everything you're seeing right now on the screen is the antithesis of who John is. And it's just creepy how this can turn someone into someone they're not, you know?
Yeah, I think it was probably, I'm positive it was done out of good intent, right?
Of course, yes.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, for people who know John, it's weird to see him like that.
Yeah, and it depends on who you're making the faces to, I guess. But we've never seen John make faces like that. All right, so as we get, I like the John one, but we had a disagreement there. We'll do a poll on it. But let's keep going.
Okay.
And so I wake in the morning and I step outside and I take a deep breath and get real high and loud. Feet to the top of my lungs. What's going on? And I say, hey, I say, hey, what's going on? And I say,
No, it's fantastic music selection, that's for sure.
Yeah, first of all, good news. Apparently harder to deep fake black folks. So that one was at least convincing. But now I'm beginning to see the guy. I've now seen him as Ben and JR and John and Brett enough that I think I know what he looks like. Okay, so he looks a little like Jay Tomlinson from Best of the Left podcast. That's my prediction. Okay, all right, but I'm still waiting for, of course. I'm afraid of what I'm going to look like, but of course Anna as well. All right, so let's keep going.
Okay, I have a lot to say. First of all, Cassie Hanks took the best picture of me that's ever been taken, and that's the picture on the left. And even with that glitchy technology, I still look good. But it's not because of me, it's because Cassie's so talented. It's amazing. The other one was like a red carpet picture or something, and that one looks creepy. But Cassie is so talented that even when they manipulate my face, I still look good. So shout outs to my girl, Cassie Hanks.
Okay, that's what you took away from it. All right, I thought that was like a version of Anna that sometimes is more fun, right? But probably more Valley too. Okay, so that's the version of Anna that's like, oh my God, let's party this instant. Okay.
Rose all day, that version.
Right. Yeah, that version, which you would be super fun to hang out with, but probably doesn't host the Young Turks.
Yeah, okay. For sure. No, I have that side to me. It's concealed for the purposes of this show. Got to be profesh, you know?
Profesh, yeah, and that's what profesh people do. They call it profesh. All right. Now the one I'm really worried about. All right, let's do it. No, that's easy. That one actually is me. There's a version of me that does that. It's usually probably on a Friday night. I don't mind that at all.
Yeah. I realized what it is that makes the videos less convincing. And it's like, no one moves their eyebrows that much. You get what I'm saying? Like there's a lot of eyebrow moving happening in every video. And it's like, if they just chilled with the eyebrows, I think it would be fine.
No, there's also like a movie, like face melting Scooby-Doo kind of element to it. It was evident in mine. It was super evident in JR's. Like the one that I think the guy probably looks, Jay Tomlinson also looks a little like Brett. So the person who did this probably looks most similar to Brett. And so that's why Brett's face looked like it was really Brett to me.
Oh, wait a minute. So is that how this, I don't know how this works.
Is Brett?
No. So does someone film themselves like singing to something and then the technology then manipulates you to look like someone else? Does that how it works?
So basically what they do is someone films themselves dancing and tracks the face while they do that. Then writes essentially a program to manipulate a photo of anyone's face into that person's face performing the song. So and you can see it has like ways that it generalizes what's behind you, that it's the most trippy, how like the shoe behind me keeps moving because it has to invent what's behind me as I move away from it, because it was always at the beginning just a still photo.
No, then in that case, Cenk's theory is 100% right. The person who did this looks just like you, Brett.
Thank you. Your face moved the least. My face was like over here, then over here, right? JR was all over the place. Anyway, that was super fun. Look, that's as good as fun as deepfake is ever gonna get. This guy, look, man, that's the beginning of it. Once they make it better, oh boy. I mean, but in a sense, it'll be liberating because every video will be a lie. So then you won't know what to believe.
Oh yeah, that's super liberating. I can't wait.
I'm with you. It is what it is, but at least that we have used it as a force of good here. So we appreciate that, and whoever did it, it was creative, and it was TYT, and nice work. Oh my God, we're past time. Okay.
Yeah.
I was wondering what the hell was going on, and I was like, I don't know if you guys have, I'm making too many Umbrella Academy references when very few people have watched it. Anyways, so I'm going to skip that. I'm just going to tell you, here comes Big Rick energy. So go to twitch.tv/TYT. Rick talks about the intersection of sports and politics, often obviously very progressive bent to it. And it's fun, So go check out Big Rick energy right now on twitch.tv/TYT. All right. Much love. We'll see you guys tomorrow.